Let's do the damn thing.
Oh, you know what time it is. It's
Time to take it to the Birdland. It's about to go down. Hope y'all ready. Yeah, let's go. Come and roll with me to the Birdland. Friends got to giving you the word, man. Any other BS is absurd, man. Sports talk and they give it to you firsthand. They can talk Terps, they can talk O's. Yeah, they both lit. That's how it goes. Baltimore squad, Ravens and Poe. Better tune in. Here on the show. Birdland, Birdland, Birdland. BS. Birdland, Birdland, Birdland. BS.
What's up, BSers?
It's all about that BS, baby.
Fred, Drew, James in the studio tonight.
Welcome.
Scott is off on the icy waters of Alaska.
He's on a boat.
He's on a boat, bitches.
I think he's on a boat. I don't know. We thought he was on a boat for like the whole time. He was still in Seattle.
Looks like he's having a good time drinking a lot of good alcohol.
Yeah, a lot of whiskey, the whole whiskey bar.
Happy summer solstice day to everybody out there. It's always a little weird. I swear every year I forget that summer starts so late. It gets hot as hell right around Memorial Day, like we were talking
prior.
prior.
Everyone says like Memorial Day is the unofficial start of summer. It's always been that way for years.
And it's just so crazy every year that it starts this late. But yeah, happy summer day to everybody. Happy belated Father's Day to all you amazing guys out there who get up every day to provide for your families. To get a chance to say that last week. Hopefully you guys, both of you, had nice Father's Day holidays.
Yeah, I mean, hanging out at a brewery all day on Saturday with the kids. They can run around and have fun.
There you go. That explains
great.
The wishy-washy text.
Yeah, that was a pretty that was pretty messed up. And then just a regular dinner, lunch on Sunday for Father's Day, and hanging out and watching some golf.
Yeah,
that's it all. Getting to be an aging dad.
You're starting to embrace old age watching golf.
Yeah.
James and I got a chance to go out yesterday and play some 18 holes. James, how'd you enjoy your Father's Day? Oh, you were working,
and it's was one of the busiest Father's Day in a while. And you know what I can't stand, and I love baseball.
Yeah.
But I hate all these travel teams for baseball that play on Father's Day. Like, and you'll get the people, well, I get to see my son play on Father's Day. That's for Scott. But like on Father's Day, I want a day of rest or do what I want. I don't want to be out in the sun baking and playing a baseball game. I'd rather either go to the baseball game with my son and enjoy my game, which is always fun there. It was packed house.
It was
down there,
packed house,
and they actually enjoyed themselves. It wasn't just for the, the giveaways and stuff, but it was still a good time, and they won. But I hate it because they have all these baseball tournaments, and they'll have it like Saturday and Sunday, and we'll be packed from like afternoon to evening. Like, let the father enjoy their day.
Well, are you guys making up for it? You got to be doing something for Father's Day, not doing it after the fact.
Yeah, we're doing it on Wednesday because it works out for all of us. My dad passed away a couple years, 11 years now.
Time flies, man.
I when people tell me Happy Father's Day, I feel like not like just like Valentine's. Like it's I love the person all year round and years, and Father's Day I don't need to be recognized. I do being a father 24/7, 365 days out of the year, and I hate when everybody comes up to me Happy Father's, especially being a new dad. Like my son's 3, so like it just. You got everybody at work. Happy Father's Day, which is great and all, but I am a father all the time. So.
All right, noted. I'll never tell James Happy Father's Day again.
Yeah, I'm a little bit on that. Like I've had a text with the group when I was sitting there watching the U.S. Open. Like, granted, at that point it was like 4:30ish, 5 o'clock, and my son's like, "Hey, Daddy, what are you gonna do for Father's Day?" I'm like, "I'm doing it. I'm sitting here watching. I'm good. Leave me alone. Go outside."
Right.
And that's how I want my Father's Day to go.
and also, Scott commented, he told you.
What did he say?
Shout out, James.
And hey, shout out. We've seen it a couple times, I think from Jessica and Scott point out that Wyatt was on the TV at the game today.
Wyatt making the big day out on the TV. I like it. Also, you got to say, happy belated Juneteenth as well for those that celebrate Juneteenth. Yep. I know the Ravens rookie class visited the Reginald F. Lewis Museum of the Maryland African American History and Culture, so that was pretty cool. Like the Ravens always do trips like that with the rookies or with just the team as like a team bonding and learning culture, learning their history. So it was a good trip for them as well. Speaking of the Ravens, Lamar finally speaks, answers questions at his mini-camp presser. But the question is, do you guys feel better about things with Lamar? We're going to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, we'll get on the board with that. The good old 105 to 7 The Fans afternoon show decided to do their jabroniness yesterday and talk about their 6-pack of most overrated. I didn't catch the underrated one today, but they decided they were trying to play some devil's not make up time or something with the overrated guys, underrated guys now. So they had their debate. So we're going to do our own little spin on it too. We're each going to pick one for both categories.
Yeah. The Orioles stay hot, man. We're less than a month away from picking number 1 in the MLB Draft. So this is going to be a very Orioles-centric show, as there's really not a ton going on with the Ravens. There are a few things that we want to talk about for sure.
They're having conversations.
They're having conversations.
That really should have been the title of the show.
We're going to have conversations. But we're going to look at maybe 5 names that you can see in an Orioles uniform potentially coming up in this draft. So a lot to talk about. Before we do, man, give a shout out to the sponsor.
It's that time again to talk about Bowers, Hassan, and Herndon. They're not MD Crash anymore. They've expanded. They have more lawyers, and they're handling a broader spectrum of cases now. Still handling all of your auto accidents, injuries on the work, injuries at work. But now the team at Bowers, Hassan, and Herndon can help you with family law issues, from divorce. God, I'm like tongue-tied all of a sudden. I don't hope this ain't going. This ain't the testament of the way the night's going to go. From family law issues, from divorce to custody to child support, even criminal cases, as minor as traffic tickets to murder even. So call now. Save this number if you haven't. 667-220-6500 anytime. Save that number, 667-220-6500.
All right, fellas, it's time for some flock talk. You can relax a little bit, right? This is the topic.
I don't know what it
was. You're good. The topic we're all comfortable speaking on.
At this point.
Mini camps come to a close. Training camp is now officially a little bit less than a month away at this point. I guess the first bear of good news that you can take away from mini camps being done: no major injuries to report out of mini camp. That's good. That's always good. Anytime you can walk away from that spot free and not have any injuries, that's great. There are still some question marks around some things. Most notably for me, my main point of concern right now is the state of the running backs. Talking about injury, right? We've seen JK and Gus around, but we really haven't heard any kind of timetable yet. We haven't heard from them directly speaking to the media. So that makes me a little nervous. Obviously the timetable adds up that they should be available week 1, but everybody's body's different. Everybody's healing is different. Does it concern you not knowing for sure when these guys will be back?
I'm concerned, but I'm not. It's not like a terminally. Like, I'm not thinking like, oh God, we're not going to have him for the season or anything like that.
Right.
Like it's you don't know how people are going to respond to the torn knees. I mean, not everybody's Adrian Peterson, but I mean, at least like we've been thinking anyway. Like, it's a lot more as a fan when a guy like that has a knee injury. You're like, okay, well, like that's a lot. You still feel more confident. Like, they can at least get back to what they were. Just it's going to be a matter of time. It might not be ready for week 1. I mean, and by the time week 1 hits, it literally for both of them will be exactly a year.
Right.
So I'm concerned, but I'm not. It's not a high concern for me. It's just like, hopefully, take your time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, take your time. If you're missing the first couple weeks, or I mean. If Mike Davis and Batty are playing, still pretty damn good and they can go, then like, hey, like, we don't need to rush these guys along, is what we talk about with pitchers all the time. Like, we don't need to rush his injury along. Right. Same thing with a running back for me.
Yeah, and obviously the Ravens are going to learn from what they did last year. Obviously, if they could take it back, they never would have played JK in that, preseason game against the Redskins or the Washington football team. So I don't think they're going to rush them back. I'd feel a little bit more confident if I saw them running around, even if they were just doing some basic drills, knowing, all right, they're getting their, their wits about them. They're getting their feet back on the ground and they're moving. I'd feel a little bit better. But to your point, take as much time as you need to get these guys ready. Obviously, they're going to be a focal point of this offense, and they're going to be a very critical part. Would you love to have them week 1 ready to go? Absolutely. But if that means, hey, you're only really going to have them for maybe week 3 and week 4 of the preseason, have those last 2 games, or week 2 and week 3 now, I guess, right? It's only
those 3 games. Yeah.
Week 2 and week 3 of the preseason. If you get them ramped up a little bit, get them a little bit of action there that they are ready for week 1, I'll feel a lot better. But to your point, if that means that they're not going to be ready till week 2, week 3, it kind of is what it is. You drafted a guy like Tyler Batty for a reason. Early reviews are he sounds good. He can catch the ball out of the backfield very well. He hits the holes aggressively. So you like what you hear early on. You want to see how that translates into training camp when they actually put the pads and everything on. Mike Davis, he has a little bit of a track record, so we know kind of what to expect with him. It did not look good last year in Atlanta, but again, this is a very different offense.
I was
going to be asked to do something very different.
I trust him here a whole lot more than Atlanta. Yeah,
exactly. But I guess the biggest news, or lack thereof, that was surrounding the Ravens, obviously, is still Lamar and his contract situation and all the questions that the fans have had about, well, why didn't you show up for OTAs and all that. Well, he finally got his day in the sun. Finally got a chance to step behind a microphone and speak. And one of the things I'll always respect about Lamar is he is very candid. He's not an idiot. Like, he's not going to overindulge and give too much information, but he does answer questions, I think, very upfront and very honestly. There was a little bit of hesitation. We'll go through it. So, first thing they asked him about was, what was the reason for staying back and not attending voluntary OTAs? Said, I just wanted to stay back and grind. I asked my guys if it was cool, and they said, yes, chemistry's there. We'll be there when I get back. I have, again, never had a problem with him missing voluntary OTAs. He was there for the mandatory, portion of it. Do you feel any different about that?
I don't feel any different about it than we had the last couple of weeks. But I mean, to add to it, you can muddy the waters on how the camps under the team guidance is going to be. But we had seen him in like March and all working with Bateman, working on stuff.
Yep.
I saw a report either yesterday or Sunday where it was, they plan to get even more players in, or other receivers, maybe Mark Andrews, and do some more practicing. So if you're doing stuff like that too, yeah, that's another one of those things where all right, it's not like, he's out there. You've seen him. He's put stuff out there himself. He's out there. It's not like you don't ever see from him for 6 weeks at a time. And you're like, oh God, what's he gonna do?
That's one of the things.
How's he coming back in when you do see him?
I've never once questioned Lamar's work ethic.
Yeah.
And I mean, he holds himself to a very high standard. So again, this wasn't this wasn't really a negative for me for him missing voluntary camp. The biggest question I think fans wanted answered, and I just wanted to make sure as well, was the absence contract related at all? And he said no. It had absolutely nothing to do with the contract. It was literally him just wanting to stay back and grind and work with his quarterback coach and do the things that he wanted to do to help get him prepared. So it had absolutely nothing to do with contract relations, which is good. But obviously that opened the door for contract questions, right?
Yeah.
The next question was, have you had any contract talks with Eric since you've been back? Yes. We're having conversations. We're just keeping it private. Again, I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with that answer. There is no resolution yet, so there's no need to get into the fine details of, well, what's been offered and what have you asked for and all that. Nobody's going to divulge that kind of information. So for him to say, yes, we are in negotiations, we are having conversations right now, we're just keeping it private, I've got no problem with that.
It adds to it. What are you going to say?
Right.
You're not giving away anything. You haven't, and it's not like you need to clarify. I mean, you don't really need to clarify anything. You're not it's never come out that you were there's no rumor that comes out hey, he's expecting this money.
Right.
Yeah, everyone assumes.
Everybody assumes where he should be
because of where this guy made a deal, and then this guy made a deal, and then the Deshaun Watson deal. That's where we're. And I think of that. I think of, and don't want to go down that road, but I mean that Deshaun Watson thing. Whether no one between him and the organization want to bring it up, I mean that's a real hurdle.
Yeah.
Because that set the precedent no matter what. That's why a lot of people around the league aren't happy about that.
Yeah, and when you've got a player who's got the leverage that Lamar Jackson does, you're going to use a contract like that, bad or not, to your advantage, and that's the right move to make. I mean, whether the Ravens pay it or not, somebody will give him that kind of guaranteed money because he's Lamar fucking Jackson. And everything that is Lamar Jackson, somebody will pay that money. So I guess the next question that I think a lot of people were kind of concerned about or maybe had some anxiety about was, does Lamar really want to be here? Like, is that why the contract's not being done? Blah, 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 blah. So the follow-up question to this was, do you want to play here in Baltimore the rest of your career? His answer was short, but it was sweet and it was to the point. I expect so. Yes, I do. He didn't give it that whole, we're in the contract negotiations. We're in negotiations like he did for a lot of other questions. He said, I expect so. Yes, I do. So that to me tells me everything I want to know. Lamar Jackson wants to be here. The Ravens want Lamar Jackson here. They're going to get this done. It's just a matter of coming to an agreement on a number.
Yeah,
that's all it
really does. I mean, like, I feel like we're beating it down another week, but I mean, that's only, we have to, but it really, I mean, it's comes down to like, just, this is what everyone expects. It's like, you kind of got like that normal thing where everyone like I just already said, it's almost kind of like, it is like he is, if he's betting on himself, like an Aaron Judge did this year with baseball,
right?
He's betting on himself. Okay. It could go sour. Okay, you can hold that against him, but it could go really good for him. So why would I mess that up?
Right. And they did ask him that. Are you betting on yourself? And they used Aaron Judge as an example. He said, no, I haven't really thought about that. I'm just playing ball like Lamar does. I mean, again, there's nothing you can question about Lamar and his work ethic. He's going to put in the work. And they did ask him about the Deshaun Watson contract. Said, does the Deshaun Watson contract affect your thought process with your future and an acceptable contract for you? Said, I don't think about it at all. I'm a man of my own. I don't worry about what those guys get. Right. So to me, that tells me, again, Lamar doesn't have representation that we know of. This is Lamar negotiating for Lamar. Right. And if he's being truthful and he says, no, Deshaun Watson's contract has nothing to do with me, then he's had a number for a while and he's going into them now.
He might even had a number that was already that high as it was.
Exactly.
It could have been exactly 230 or it could have been, 250 for all we know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he waited because they asked him, well, was there a reason you didn't want to address it during the offseason? He said, I was away and I just wanted to grind. That's why. Right. So he hadn't approached them in the offseason at all about the contract. He gets here during mandatory camp and he presents whatever it is that Lamar wants to them. Right. And he's basically saying in these answers, Deshaun's contract had nothing to do with it. This is a Lamar Jackson deal. This is what I feel I am worth. And what I honestly respect him a lot for doing what he does. One, he's going to make a ton more money having to cut out the middleman. But if he goes in there and he demands this kind of money, whatever that number is, we don't know what it is. It could be 40, 45, 50 million. We don't know what that number is going to be annually. He's going to make a hell of a lot more money than Deshaun Watson's making, that regardless, because how much of that $230 million is he paying to his agent that got him that deal? Deshaun Watson didn't work that on his own, right? So I have a lot of respect for what Lamar Jackson's doing.
A super agent definitely worked that Deshaun Watson deal.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other question, I know some fans, not everybody, but some fans had some concern about, because obviously we talked about it last week, the added weight, muscle, right? How much did he put on? Because it's pretty noticeable when you look at him from 2019 pictures to what you see him as today. He said, usually I'm around that like 205 to 208 mark. Right now he's at 220. So that's, 12 to 15 pound difference, which can benefit you if it's healthy weight. But it can also hamper you a little bit too, especially a guy like Lamar who uses his elusiveness and uses his elite acceleration to a benefit, right? 15 pounds, that's a lot of weight to be putting on your ankles, to be putting on your knees, to doing all those things that make Lamar Jackson who he is.
So I had thought about this, and I wish I had brought it up last week, but now's the perfect time since we are actually really focusing on that. I agree with you for the most part, because you've seen that there's a precedent even set for running backs, jokes aside, for he's a quarterback, not a running back.
Right.
Putting on that weight because they want to be able to do the grind and they want to be able to take the hits and have a long, longevity, and it slows them down and actually messes with their game. I could agree with that could be an issue with him. But what if it's a situation I've been thinking about where, what if, you always hear about the running quarterbacks are going to get hurt. Whether that's, that's one's gray area where everyone just wants to point that out, even though the guy gets hurt in like the pocket.
Right.
What if all that weight is to say, well, you guys keep calling me a running back. I'm gonna go out there and prove I'm not just a running back. Maybe I am sitting in the pocket more. And maybe there is taking a couple more hits in the pocket because you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you could be putting on weight to protect you from all angles. So you sit there and talk about putting them in the pocket all the time. Well, now what? You know what I mean? Now what?
Right. No, I mean, I agree with you because there's pros and cons to the added weight, no matter which way you look at it. And I think that is a very good point that, yeah, the added weight's going to help him with his longevity. That's why a guy like Ben Roethlisberger was able to play as long as he did, taking all the hits that he did was because he was a big man. He was a large dude,
and
right?
He's always pretty damn elusive for the most part until like later years.
I'm not comparing him to Ben Roethlisberger in any way.
I know what you're saying, though.
The extra weight absolutely does add a little bit more of durability to him. But again, what separates Lamar and makes Lamar Jackson who he is his elusiveness, right? Is his ability to stop and go on a dime. That extra 15 pounds could hamper that. You saw that a little bit with Mike Vick. If you look at pictures of Mike Vick when he first came into the league and when he was playing at Virginia Tech, to growing into a man and getting into that man weight and putting a little bit of happy weight on when he got paid and all that stuff, he was still elusive, but he wasn't quite the Mike Vick that we all saw in that first 4 to 5 years of his career, right? Obviously, he had a long break too after that.
After that, yeah.
But even before the break, he still wasn't quite as elusive as he was. So that's my only concern with the added weight. Hopefully, it's a healthy weight. It looks like a healthy weight from what you can physically see.
I feel like you could spin it both ways. That's what I wanted to point out. Like, you know what? You always talk about him being in the pocket more, or he sat there and maybe if my O-line gets hurt again, I'm having the same O-line. Maybe I have to be a little more steadfast where I'm at.
Well, he said, I just want to do it to see how it looks and feels. I feel good. I feel stronger.
That's a funny way to put it. Like, I just want to see what it looks like.
Yeah, I just want to see what it looked like with a little extra ball.
Comes in, he's like 5 pounds lighter by the time he comes in the camp. Like, see, that's what it looks like. All right.
Well, we all know, Coach said he looked good. And we all know John Harbaugh doesn't mince his words with weight. If he thinks a guy is out of shape or if he thinks a guy doesn't look good, he'll beat that out of you. He'll tell you like, hey, you need to lose some weight. You need to get your ass in gear. I mean, maybe with the contract negotiations going on, he don't want to put any kind of negativity towards Lamar, but I'll trust John Harbaugh's decision on that. But another topic I wanted to talk a little bit about, wide receiver, right? We talked obviously at ends about the trade of Marquise Brown. We all obviously know it's next man up, which is going to be Rashad Bateman. That's why he was drafted. He was drafted to be a number 1 wide receiver. Well, now he'll be that guy. I want to figure out from you guys, what's your opinion on who wide receiver number 2 is going to end up being this year, right? Because when you look at the current wide receiver core right now, last year, talking about 2021, Devin Duvernay led the current group. He had 33 catches for 272 yards, 2 touchdowns. James Prochet had 16 catches for 202 yards, no touchdowns. Tylan Wallace, 2 catches, 23 yards, 0 touchdowns, right? So when you look at last year's wide receiving group, the number 2 wide receiver on the team ended up being Rashad Bateman in his rookie year. He had 46 catches, 515 yards, and 1 touchdown. That's double the production of any of those 3 receivers, even Devin Duvernay, who was the leading one at 33 catches for 272 yards. Out of that group, who do you think steps up and is the true number 2 wide receiver on this team?
Easily for me, it's Devin Duvernay. The only thing I think that could stop that kind of from being, or maybe it muddying it up more, is if like an Isaiah Likely really comes out of the shell and
I don't want to factor tight ends in.
But I mean more for taking target. Not that I wouldn't call him like the next receiver.
Okay, gotcha.
So just if something like that, like a guy like him steps out and he's like even just the same kind of like Hayden Hurst role that he had here,
right?
Or if they thinking like they treat him, they like him so much at the return game. Kind of has that Jacoby Jones feel where like, yeah, he was out in the field for receiving, but like that was, you know what I mean? Like maybe they don't want to push it too much and then it factored there. But then again, they can find someone else in camp that like does that job just as good as he did, and then it would open him up more. I mean, you've got all these targets that are vacated by Brown being gone. They're going to go somewhere.
Yeah. put it in perspective, Brown had 91 catches, 1,008 yards, and 6 touchdowns last year, right? So if Bateman were to step up to that same type of level at wide receiver one, taking 91 catches for 108 yards, the next person in line from a wide receiver standpoint had 46 catches. Again, Devin Duvernay, James Prochet would have to basically double their output to get to that level.
And they would at least have the, maybe, you would think they would have the games on it, because Bateman only did it 12.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you figure if they took his workload and increased it a little bit, say that was Devin Duvernay, it could be something like 55 for, 650, 700. I mean, that might be the number, 2 wide receiver, just because, like you said, Mark Andrews is there. That looks like they're going to be doing the 2019 all over again. I think Devin Duvernay has the best shot. I mean, I'm intrigued by Prochet, and I don't know enough about Wallace yet.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of feel. It's going to be a weird first month that we're going to find out.
I think it's going to be close between Duvernay and Prochet, but they're going to impact the game in 2 different ways. The biggest question mark that you're missing right now, not having a Hollywood Brown out there, is the down the field threat, right? Not that Rashad Bateman can't be that guy, because I think that's another part of Rashad Bateman's game that's a little bit underrated. But you do need to have that guy that can kind of take the top off the defense. And if you're just talking about the group that we have here, not bringing in an outside free agent or anything like that, just the group that we have, I think Devin Duvernay gives them the best over the top, down the field target out of this group that's available. James Prochet is more of your clean route running, good hands, possession type receiver. And I think he will make an impact because he just hasn't had the opportunity right now to shine so far. And I think this year will be a big year for James Prochet. That's why he's putting in the extra work with Lamar. That's why he's been working with Bateman and getting that time in, because I think he understands that if he's going to extend his career in the NFL, wide receivers are a dime a dozen. We see hundreds of them, it seems like, every year getting drafted, right? It's just, and the rotation of players in and out at wide receiver happens quickly. If Prochet wants to extend his career and get a second contract, this year is crucial to him. And I think if I had to pick one, that's enough for me to give him the edge in receiving yards and receptions, is that he's put in the work and it's time to shit or get off the pot for him.
Yeah.
At least in my opinion.
You got a thought over that?
Yeah. You got anything on that, James?
I was going to bring up, I thought Duvernay, when he had those 2 touchdowns, I thought that was with Hudley as the quarterback, because I think they had a good chemistry during the
you might be right,
season, whatever.
Right.
I think he did a lot of damage. I think Prochet should be the number 2, but I do like Wallace, and I have always liked it. I liked it when we drafted him. I wish they would use more of him last year, but we don't know anything that ins and outs of what he does at practice, or John Harbaugh's thinking, or G Rose. So maybe he wasn't doing that at practice, but I felt like he was like a Steve Smith type of wide receiver, small, but could, great hands, and probably could do damage after the catch. So,
yeah. And, to be honest with you, you said you don't know a whole lot about Tylan Wallace. Like, that was kind of his comparison coming out of college, was Steve Smith. He is I'm going to go up and attack the ball. He's a little bit undersized, go up and attack the ball, use his body and his strength and his hands to come down with it. And I think that's what this offense is missing. Again, he barely saw the field last year, mostly due to just lack of opportunities, but also injury as well. So he is kind of the wild card there that could play an effect on this roster. We just haven't seen it yet. We got to see it on the field and see what it translates to. But I'm excited about him.
It's going to be a fun training camp, at least at that position, because a guy like Prochet always looks good in training camp. So hopefully, they all look good, and we'll find out.
Are you okay with the current wide receiver core?
I mean, the way this offense is, you're going to beat it into the ground. Everyone on Twitter already was the other week. Like, we know, Roman's system isn't, Aaron Rodgers type system. It isn't like a slinging it around type of system. If the running backs are healthy, obviously that's what they're going to want to do. You still got all, the Boyle and Ricard. You still got Andrews doing his thing. And you brought in the new tight ends. Like, we know, like, this isn't your prototypical high flying offense, But I just feel like you still have a really good quarterback. You still have all these targets that are going to go to someone. It's not like, you know what I mean? Like, it isn't like only half of his targets are going to go to someone, then literally it's all running. Like, they're going to be passing. So, look, someone's going to step up.
Yeah.
You're going to have to.
And they're going to be working out together down in Florida. I think it's Florida Atlantic that they're going to be down there with, all of them together. So we'll see what comes of that group as well. Go ahead, James.
I don't know if you heard on all the social medias, but have you heard about the Ravens should trade? And I don't think it would cost that much, but they want, I think, was it Chris Miller from Tampa?
Oh,
Scotty Miller.
Scotty Miller or Kenny Galladay from the Giants. I saw both.
They were
of those
talking about
names.
Scotty Miller because he's behind so many wide receivers. He get more opportunity up here, but he's kind of small, but he can catch the ball. But I think he has some kind of like injuries that he can't stay on the field either. But
I mean, Scotty Miller to me isn't much of an upgrade over what we have right now. I like that doesn't wow factor me. Kenny Galladay would have wow factored me a couple years ago prior to injuries and stuff, but he's had nothing but injuries.
I mean, that's like, granted, talking about injuries, like I still feel like Will Fuller being under. Like, I know, like, you worry about the injuries, like you did, like all the time, or like with Watkins, but that is that guy that at least will just be like straight line down the field. Maybe he won't be on the field as much. You know what I mean? Like,
but if he's okay with that,
then it would fit.
Right.
But do you think like the wide receivers that we have now are more basically all the same wide receivers?
I think a lot of them are similar. Yeah, I think a lot of them are similar, but like I said, Devin Duvernay is more of the down the field guy. I think James Prochet is more of a possession guy and move the chains guy. And I think Tylan Wallace is kind of a in-betweener. He could do a little bit of everything. He would have been a second-round wide receiver had he not got hurt in college. Like, he just needs a chance. He needs to stay healthy, and he needs to get an opportunity. Hopefully they all go down there to Florida and take advantage of the time and get the chemistry working with Lamar. And we'll see who takes. I mean, like I said, all of these guys are basically in the same boat. They just need the opportunity to perform. If the right wide receiver becomes available due to a team making a cut later on, obviously Eric DeCosta is going to entertain that. If it brings value and it can upgrade this team, he will always look at it. But it's not a dire need, in my opinion, based on how this offense is constructed and how it's ran.
Yeah, especially like at what cost or something, like where you've seen it out there about like a Terry McLaurin type of thing, where he's having a weird contract.
It's like a pipe dream.
It's a pipe dream. And okay, so if he's having contract issues with Washington,
right,
he's not going to have contract issues here.
Right,
it's going to cost you a first and like Chuck Clark. Is that like really? But then is it really worth it? And I love Terry McLaurin.
Oh, we both do. Yeah.
We all do.
Yeah.
But it's just stuff like that, those pipe dream type stuff. Like at this point, even if it was 2 months ago or right around the draft, like even then something like that was like, nah, it's just too much of a stretch.
Yeah, I agree. But they got a lot of talent at tight end as well. I know a lot of people out there talking about the tight ends that we have. We got a ton of talent there. And again, they're going to go to a lot of 2 and 3 tight end formations again this year. Hopefully they can all stay healthy. They're going to have to make some tough decisions, I think, when it comes to that tight end spot, because I think there's more talent than there is positions and roster spots. They just used 2 draft picks. So, those guys are going to be factored in. So it'll be interesting to see what the Ravens decide to do at that position. Talking about interesting, you mentioned it kind of earlier in the show, right? So 105.7 The Fans All-Star Group.
Where one guy gets fired from CBS.
Yeah. Jason Lockenfora and Ken Wyman started some interesting conversation and an interesting debate that kind of turned south on them. So I wanted to kind of talk, being it slow, wanted to give the fans a little chance to chime in and see what their thoughts and opinions are on this. And I want to go around the room and each one of you get a chance to answer one player to these questions. What we're going for here is the Ravens' most overrated and underrated players of all time. Now, to set the criteria with this, right? Now, this is where I think 105.7 did a terrible job with this. So, overrated player. What I mean by this is all the players that have all the hype that come with them, all the players that we've talked about that are, all the top tier of Ravens history. I'm not talking about the misses. I'm not talking about the Brashad Perrymans, the Matt Elams.
Sergio Kendall. That's cheating.
Exactly. I'm not talking about the bust. I'm talking about
we've done the bust stuff.
The best of the best players that get all the hype out of that group. Who is the most overrated out of that group? Now, you got to remember, no matter what name you throw out here, we're all going to catch heat, right? Because everybody loves these players. Everybody falls in love with their own guys, right? So no matter how we go about this, we're gonna get some heat on this, and you guys are gonna catch some heat too with your names, I'm sure. But I want you to give me who your most overrated player is, and give me a reason why. James, I'll start with you. Most overrated Raven of all time.
Most overall rated player is, I'm gonna have to say, Ray Rice.
Okay.
Rice, everybody loves him, the little short guy. Hey, diddle diddle, Ray up the middle. Okay, that's cool and all, but his career was cut short because of things that we do off the field, and didn't get to finish what he started. He started something and really didn't get to see the finished product because of what happened.
And he tailed off quite a bit those last 2 years he was playing.
Correct. And I think that was like a sort of little scapegoat to get rid of him after everything that went down. So to me, Ray Rice is it.
Ray Rice. Okay. I'm not going to put you under the bus yet. I'll go with mine. I'll go with mine.
I still don't have my reasons.
I think Drew's going to have the more controversial player of the group here.
And by the way, if anybody in this chat, if you're mentioning Joe, give a reason. Don't just say Joe Flacco.
Yeah, give us your reasons. So I'm going to go for my most overrated player. I am going to go quarterback, but I'm going to take it back.
Lamar Jack.
No, I'm going to take it back. I'm going to go back to the first Super Bowl. I'm going to go to Trent Dilfer. And this is why I say he's the most overrated, right? Because you have a divided fan base on their feelings on Trent Dilfer and how he was handled after winning the Super Bowl, right? A lot of fans were like, how are you letting go a quarterback that brought you a Super Bowl and blah, 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 and all this, and I love Trent Dilfer. I love all these players. I love Ray Rice. I love all the players that we're going to mention. But you got to, when you come up with most overrated player, I think it's Trent Dilfer because the only reason that he won us that Super Bowl is because he didn't lose us that Super Bowl. He didn't do any more than what they asked him to do, which was very minimal, right? That defense that he played with is historically a top 3 defense of all time.
Yeah, it's either them or Chicago. Like, that's kind of like the 85 Bears, yeah.
Right. And it was very good afterwards, but it was never what it was that year. Maybe in 2005, I think it was. They had another really, really good run. But to expect Trent Dilfer to assign a contract and to win multiple Super Bowls and all that stuff, it's a little far-fetched in my opinion, just because, again, that defense, as good as it was, and the players that they had, they were stacked top to bottom, secondary to line. They had guys out the yin-yang, and a lot of guys walked off. Sam Adams, Tony Saragusa, Rod Woodson, a lot of guys' careers came to an end after that Super Bowl. Shannon Sharp, a lot of players that were very key pieces, right? That I don't think having Trent Dilfer around for a few more years equaled another Super Bowl. That's my opinion on it. That's why I say he's one of the most overrated Ravens of all time. Now, Drew.
All right, Drew.
All right.
Let us know.
Come on, everybody.
I'm going to call back on Greg Zero here. I don't agree with the whole Flacco overrated thing. I think Flacco's rated. For what it's worth, I mean, I don't disagree with people thinking the
Do you think he was overpaid?
Yes,
Okay.
because eventually all these quarterbacks, half of them are going to be overpaid one way or the other, because that's about the time when it started.
Yeah.
Well, he was the next contract. Then Aaron Rodgers got a contract. You know what I mean? Like all these other quarterbacks, that's kind of when it started. So I'll call back to Craig Zero. He mentioned with Flacco that in their regular season, Flacco had a lot left to be desired, and he was a playoff hero. And it wasn't just the Super Bowl season. Like, obviously, that was really good. But even the year before, when, falling short in AFC Championship game, that was a really good playoff for him, too. He had some other playoff moments. So my point being, if Flacco's overrated because he's all about the postseason, then this guy at wide receiver is just as overrated if you're going to point out Joe Flacco. Anquan Bolden.
What?
Was a great wide receiver in Arizona. If you're going to come from Arizona, I expect you to have a 1,000-yard season every year. And I don't want you sitting there saying, well, it's Joe's fault. No, he never had a 1,000-yard year. I'm going to get to my underrated guy as a comparison.
We'll
so it's good. I'll kind of clarify a little better probably during that guy. I don't dislike Bolden, but it was like you didn't have a lot of it didn't feel like you really brought the Arizona Anquan Bolden with him. And I think if we're going to point out Joe's accolades in the postseason, same thing as Anquan Bolden, we remember a lot, I think, with what Bolden did with Flacco in those playoff games, in the Super Bowl, the block with Ray Rice, even though it would be illegal now. You will remember stuff like that. But just for me, I feel like if you went out and made that move, because at that point, you really didn't have a high-profile wide receiver. They never really drafted one.
Right. The
Travis Taylors or the Mark Claytons all kind of fell short. I felt like if you're bringing in that guy, you would expect if you're so great, you're gonna. It doesn't matter what the quarterback is. You should at least have 1,000 yards. You should at least do some of what you did in Arizona. I just feel like he left a little bit wanting. Maybe I want to be a little controversial. A little bit.
I was going to say, I think it's more controversial. No, it's a tough question. When you're talking overrated players of all time, you're talking about the best of the best, right? And Anquan Bolden, in my opinion, one of the best of the best. He fit the definition of Baltimore, right? He was tough. He was gritty. He'd get in your face. He was physical. He was the epitome of what a Baltimore player was and what we thought on defense. But he brought that attitude to the offensive side, right? And to your point, what he did in that Super Bowl run, we don't win that Super Bowl. Joe Flacco doesn't go on that historical run without a guy like Anquan Bolden. Was he not putting up the numbers he was putting up in Arizona when he had Larry Fitzgerald out there with him? And it was a different offense versus what he was expected to do here. Again, he came here to a team who was defensively built. They weren't going to throw for 4,000 or 5,000 yards a year. But Anquan Bolden, I think that's a tough pill to swallow to say most overrated.
Remember your comment, Robert Lewis, because I'm going to bring up a wide receiver in a second.
Man. All right. So we got the 3 overrated players. James, make sure you're taking notes on who everybody out there is saying their overrated player is. I'd like to bring that back up later. Underrated player of all time. This is tough, right? So this is, again, situation of players where maybe they just don't get a lot of love or don't get enough love or courage because of other players around them, that kind of thing. James, I'll start with you. Who was your most underrated player of all time for the Ravens?
To me, I had to go with Ladarius Webb, for the situation that we drafted him.
It's a great pick.
It's just very unappreciated. He had that injury that sort of set him back, but he was that next guy that was in the back secondary to take over for when Every was gone, and we needed that shutdown corner. So Darius Smith and everybody in Baltimore loved him too. He did a lot for the community. He's still around with the he would do the softball
Yeah, he did have the softball, like Towson and stuff like that. Yeah, he did do that.
He was a guy, and people, to me, forget about him. So,
and he made an impact both at corner and safety throughout his career. Man, they moved him around a lot, and played his entire career here in Baltimore. Did everything he was asked to do. All right, Drew, I'm going to give you a chance to redeem yourself because the crowd is fucking eating you up in the chat room.
I was sitting there thinking, I wish did you get rid of the Mason?
No,
Derek Mason's my underrated thing. I can't see that far. You're going to have to just bring it up for me.
So Derek Mason is your underrated.
To my point of what Bolden, expecting something of Bolden, like this guy was having 1,000-yard seasons. He had a couple at the end with Flacco.
He had 4 total
but he had 4 total in his 5 years.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He had 6 years in Baltimore.
So he had 1,000 yards in his first year, 750. I think he had injury issues. Another 1,000, and then 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons before his last season when he only had 800.
Mind you, that first 1,000-yard season when he was here
was not with Joe Flacco.
No, it was with Kyle Bowler and Anthony Wright.
I think you looked it up. Kyle Bowler and Anthony Wright, one of them had 1,500, the other had 1,800.
Yeah.
So 3,200, 3,300 yards, and that guy had a 1,000-yard season. I just think it's a shame because he is. I don't think he'll be a Hall of Famer. We'll be in that cusp. If he becomes a Hall of Famer, it's one of the situations where at some point, guys get in. Either where it's the Veterans Committee type stuff, or it's just well, look, we don't have anyone to vote for this, year.
Right.
But I don't think he really gets mentioned enough around here. Even in Tennessee, he's kind of been outspoken a little recently. He don't really get love. At least you would expect love from Tennessee because,
right,
you went to a Super Bowl with them. You did a lot with them. It wasn't, you know what I mean? It wasn't just Steve McNair. You did that. I felt like it was a pretty good contrast. If I'm going to call out Bolden for the not having 1,000 yards, it was easy to pick Derek Mason. He was a pretty decent guy. He was a little bit talkative, kind of like Steve Smith, but not as extreme. But like we said, you had to sit there and play with like nothing. Like, 4 or 5 different quarterbacks before it was Joe Flacco.
And not to mention, I'm sorry if I missed this,
no, it's
but
fine.
the 3 out of the 4 years that he had over 1,000 yards receiving, he was 33, 34, and 35 years old.
Yeah, he wasn't young.
He wasn't young,
Nope.
right? So this guy, I mean, he just had an amazing career. And to your point, I think he's kind of gotten shit on by the Titans because they just do not recognize him. And you can see him crying out on social media about it too. He brings it up at every chance that he gets, and rightfully so. This is a guy who should be in the conversation for a Ring of Honor type of guy for the Titans. I don't know what they do there like we do here with the Ravens, but he should be a Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
When you think of the Titans, who do you think of? You think of Steve McNair, Eddie George, Derek Mason, and now Derrick Henry. That's it. Like, how many players do you really have to hang your hat on? Derek Mason should be one of them. 100%. So I
always liked him. I liked him in Tennessee. I mean, it was a rivalry then in the early years of when before the division split. Like, they were the big rival. It wasn't Pittsburgh necessarily, even though that was the same division. Pittsburgh took off from there after the merger, but the expansion draft. I just felt like look, if I'm going to pull up Bolden, I'll do the polar opposite, not polar opposite, but I'll shout out a guy that's kind of like similar player type that I would expect out of Bolden or Derek Mason's numbers.
All right, so for me on the underrated player, it was tough for me to choose here. You guys both picked players that were on my list, so I couldn't go with those. We're going with different players here, right? So the 2 guys I was trying to pick between, first one was Jamie Sharper, was going back a few years, talking about that first Super Bowl.
He was always one of my favorites back then. Yeah.
Great player, but he was in a defense with Ray Lewis and Peter Boulware. So he was kind of the guy that flew under the radar. He did everything that you wanted him to do. Ends up leaving Baltimore in the expansion draft with Houston when Houston comes in the league, right? So I think he was a very underrated player, but I'm going to go a little bit different. And I'm going to go with a player that I know a lot of the fan base loves him, loves his personality, but I think he's a little underrated as to his impact as a whole as a Raven, and that's Jacoby Jones. I absolutely love Jacoby Jones. I don't think they used him enough as a wide receiver. This is a guy that came over, speaking of Houston, came over from Houston, just had the yips, man. He couldn't catch anything. He was having trouble with holding on to the football. Like, it just ended on bad terms in Houston. He came here and kind of revitalized his career, both as a kick returner, a punt returner. He brought an energy and just a vibe to the stadium that goes, I just don't think people recognize it enough. And we talk about the impact that Joe Flacco, Anquan Bolden had that Super Bowl year of 2012. Again, we do not win that Super Bowl without Jacoby Jones. We don't win it without the catch on the Miracle, the Miracle High in Denver, Mile High Miracle, couldn't think of it, in Denver. We don't win it without the return in the Super Bowl, and he had a touchdown that was amazing in the Super Bowl, touchdown catch in the Super Bowl. Should have probably been the Super Bowl MVP, in my opinion, that game, not Joe Flacco. I think Joe Flacco got it because of the total body of work that he did for the entire playoffs that game, that year.
He's overrated, though, so that matter.
I love Jacoby Jones and what he was as a player.
Yeah, Jacoby was my favorite. Like, I
one of my
liked
favorite
him and
players.
used him. I had drafted him a couple years in fantasy, thinking to be something. But yeah, when he came here, I was happy about it. And then just to see what he did in the return game and the big play ability. Yeah, I like your pick.
Yeah, it was tough. But speaking of Jacoby Jones, right? This is another reason I wanted to go Jacoby. This was kind of the deciding factor here. We all remember the turn that wasn't, right? We all remember that, right? We wanted answers, I think, for years now of what really happened there with Jacoby and Mike Tomlin. Well, Mike Tomlin was on the Pivot podcast yesterday, and they asked him about that situation. Ryan and I even tried to drag it out of his son Dino in our first episode on Shell and Tell. Couldn't get a clear-cut answer from him either. It's been over 10 years now, and finally Tomlin addressed the topic. Take a listen to this.
I stand on the line.
Oh.
I watch the ball get kicked. I make sure that we're not offsides. And then I watch the Jumbotron. And so in that instance, we were kicking left to right. The Jumbotron was behind our kick unit. And so we kicked the ball off, and I'm looking up at the contour of the deal. and somebody falls down. And so when somebody fell down, I almost like leaned in on the jumbotron. Like, ugh. You know what I mean?
We got trouble.
And then I saw a double team block, and I said, "Oh no!" And so I'm walking at the jumbotron like I'm
in your house watching TV,
like I'm watching a horror movie. Like, oh no, oh that's bad. Okay, what people don't talk about is the stuff that on the jumbotron is backwards.
Mm-hmm.
It's flipped, and so I'm watching the jumbotron. On the jumbotron, it looks like he's running up the right sideline.
Yeah.
But actually he's coming up our sideline. And so I'm processing it. I'm serious. Once the ball got kicked, I'm locked in on the jumbotron. I'm watching the structure of it break down, and it has got my attention.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at, oh man, I'm walking at it and I'm looking. And I'm in my mind, I'm thinking he's going up their sideline because the jumbotron picture is backwards. I didn't realize I was in danger, man, until I saw myself on the jumbotron. Hey, dude, no joke.
Yeah.
I saw myself on the jumbotron. I dodged Jacoby because I saw myself. I never saw him.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, and he went by me.
Yeah.
I saw myself as he was running down the sideline. I came into the jumbotron.
But it did make him step inside, and that gave a better angle for the tackler.
Certainly. I don't deny that.
But there's a mistake. That was strategic.
And I paid $100,000 for that mistake.
Yeah, he probably should have paid more for it. So when I first listened to this, right, because again, this is the first time I've ever heard Tomlin speak publicly.
When you played that was the first time I heard it.
Yeah, he's just never addressed it, kind of avoided it, and again, a decade later, he finally talks about it. So I honestly, when I listened to him talk about it, I kind of believed him because I don't remember exactly, like I remember the play, but I don't remember the details to it. So I went back and watched it as it happened. And yeah, for the majority of the beginning of the return, he's watching the jumbotron, so all that adds up. But for the last 15 yards that Jacoby is running up the sideline, he's not looking at the jumbotron. He's looking over his shoulder, knowing that Jacoby's coming up on him, and then jumps out of his way. So I don't know if I believe it or not 100%. Go back and watch the clip. If you haven't watched it in a few years, you haven't seen it in a little bit of time, not everything adds up with his story here, but I thought it was at least interesting to talk about it because, again, this is something that hadn't been addressed in over a decade.
Nah, it's bullshit. No, sorry, no.
What's your take on it?
Luckily, we won the game, but that's just that. No. Because now, like I said, okay, I'd have to go back and watch. I haven't watched it in quite some time, but I still feel like the way he was playing that was like, as soon as I saw myself on the jumbotron, I moved. I don't remember him moving at all until they made contact, and then they
never actually touched. Okay. So what happened was Jacoby is running up the sideline, sees Tomlin is standing on, like literally on the hash mark, has to cut a little bit inside to avoid him. Tomlin jumps in out of the way, literally last second. But that little bit that he moved to the inside,
someone catch up and
gave the guy a better
That's
angle.
what I remember. Then that
exactly.
Okay. That's where I remember him going down. Yeah, it's still bullshit.
It is bullshit.
It's still bullshit. Get your ass off the fucking field. You're not supposed to be on the field. There's a huge white strip called the out of bounds mark. It's not little. It's not the base path in baseball. It is fucking huge enough that you should be crossing it. Well, that's like guys like guys like McVay. McVay has a guy that can pull him back.
off. I know. Like, how fucking old are you that you need somebody to pull you off the field?
You're one of the best. You're one of the best coaches of all time.
Yeah,
it's horseshit.
Yeah, how much does that guy make? I know he makes a lot more than I do. Can I get that job, please? Yeah. I'll do it. I'll throw your ass on the ground. No, so what makes that play, and what I remember about that play even worse, is I was at the stadium when this happened, right? I was in the upper deck, so did you really see it happen live? No, because where I was sitting at, it was too high up to see that little bit of movement. But they showed it on the jumbotron right after it happened, right? And you could clearly see that he was in his way. Well, then after they show the replay of it, immediately, this is while it's all on commercial, immediately they cut to a live feed of Tomlin because Tomlin was watching the board watching the replay happen. And as soon as his fucking face pops up, he gives you that Tomlin smirk, right? That little bit of smile. I was like, you motherfucker. I could not, like, as much as I respect Mike Tomlin at that point, I completely hated him. And it hasn't changed one bit since.
I don't believe it.
You know what's funny? That guy that pulls McVay out of the way, I would love to have one to push Gyro into the fucking field.
I stand on the line.
All right, James, it's time for a social media shout out. Who's been in the chat room? Who's chatting it up?
Everybody's chatting it up. Thank you. This has been a very vocal group in here, Fred. We hit 100 messages, comments.
I figured
early.
it was a very heated topic to talk about.
Not heated, but a lot of great points and a lot of people. So we're going to start. Craig Zero is number one, but we got a whole list. We have Jamal, Chuck Summers, Marcus, Nick Short, Sharon Sherry, Jessica Blake, Steve, Kamal Porter, Joe, Scott Foster came in. You know, he's on his cruise, maybe got some service and put his 2 cents in. John Googs, Sea Iron Addiction, Shell and Tell stopped in. TJ Robert, and Thomas Morgan, Stephanie Summers, Joshua, Ahmed, Travis Whitfield, Robert T. Lewis, Jarrett Green, and Eye of Hours Taurus has been chatting in. So everybody's been chatting in. I appreciate it. The comments are coming in. I saved some comments that we're going to discuss now or later. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah, for all you guys that are chiming in the chat room, any of the comments that he saved, make sure you stay for the after hours after the show. We'll pull them out one by one, and we'll try to answer them all for you. All right, fellas, it's time for some bros, bows, and O's, and that excites me.
June's been pretty fun for the Orioles.
It has, man. Coming off a series win at home versus the Rays, taking 2 out of 3, including a close come-from-behind win on Saturday. Team now sits 30-38 on the season, on pace for 70-plus wins this year. Hard to believe, 68 games of the season.
So hard to believe.
It really is that they're on this kind of pace. But for perspective, right, the team won their 30th game on June 19th this year. They didn't win their 30th game last year until July 18th. A full month difference. In their last 47 games, the team is 24-23, playing above 500 baseball.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think, like you said, and I can't remember when the 19-game losing streak ended, but you had a 19-game losing streak. And you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, that just goes to show you why that's a huge difference. It shows that, like, this is why you said on June 19th is when they got the 30th win, and then a month later, shit like that, you're avoiding those long ones. I mean, they've had, I think maybe their longest this year was like 6-game losing streak. Like, they've had like their ruts, obviously. Like, April started off slow where they weren't hitting a lot, but at least in the hitting, sometimes maybe the timely hitting isn't quite there all the time, but like hitting as a whole, like I seen the graphic before, like this is what it was in April, this is what it was in May, and then June is just like completely like almost like a complete 180.
Yeah, and I don't remember any terrible series. The only one that kind of rubbed me the wrong way was the Detroit series.
Yeah,
when
Detroit,
they were playing hot.
It bled into the New York series.
Yeah, right. And you had guys getting ready to come up, and was Adley going to come up at that point and all that stuff. So that was really the only bad series that I remember this year. They've just, it's you know what's funny is every day I check to see if the Orioles are playing. Like, I haven't done that in a while. It's like if I catch a game, I try to catch like 2 or 3 games a week the past couple of years. Now I'm like anticipating. I'm looking forward to all the games.
Like last night would have been perfect.
Yeah.
I like to have a game to watch, and then
exactly.
They weren't playing. It sucked.
Well, they're getting ready to start a short Battle of the Beltway series tonight down at the Yard versus the Nats.
What's the score? Do you know?
Get that score
for us. It was 2-0 Nats.
2-0 Nats. All right.
Yeah,
They're like 10-0.
I know Jordan Lyles coming back tonight after missing Sunday due to a stomach issue. A lot of people started the trade rumors around that. Obviously, the Orioles are going to consider trades, and it's getting around that time now. Jordan Lyles could be a valuable piece to another team. We'll talk about that in the future.
Definitely have to step it up a little bit lately.
Yeah, there's been a lot of things really over the last week that's happened. So I just want to quickly run down these things and get your take on them, right? It starts with Bruce Zimmerman. He ends up getting sent down to AAA to work on some things. kid that started off strong, right? You and I had talked about it even on the show that he had kind of almost a John Means kind of trajectory, right? The way he come in and he was figuring things out, and
it really did remind me. Yeah, it really
did
remind me of what Means was doing in 2018.
Right. But ends up giving up 18 home runs so far this year, tied for the most in the majors right now. Allowed 18 runs and 31 hits in his last 15 innings. I think it was time for him to go down and start working on some stuff.
Yeah, we were having that debate in our group chat too, where it was like, you had me like trying to give him benefit of the doubt, like he needs to be doing a certain thing, and it just the command wasn't there, and he doesn't have he has to be on because it doesn't have the stuff.
He doesn't have the
other
blow
guys
by you
have.
Stuff. Yeah,
we were having conversations.
Like you said, just home runs. Like to me, like home runs are the epitome of like that. Okay, if you're still trying to figure it out, if you're giving up these little weak hits or something, like, or you know what I mean, like a lot more base hits than home runs. Okay, but just a home run, like you said, like 18, but like 12 of them were across 3 starts.
Yeah,
like that is just I started. Hopefully he figures it out. We'll see if that's the thing in Norfolk. I mean, I hope so for his sake, because like one way or the other, at some point, like if the starting pitching goes down, that's going to be really bad.
Zimmerman was never a guy I looked at as the potential like 4 or 5 rotation guy down the road when this team's ready to compete again. He was a guy that kind of came out of nowhere, and I thought, well, shit, if we can find a spot for this guy and he's going to pitch like this, because I mean, he started out the year with a 2.72 ERA through May 14th, but then it jumped big time. It's up to 5.94 now. Had a scoreless streak of 14 2/3 innings to start the year. So again, hopefully this isn't a sign of the way things are going to be. This is just a sign of him hitting a rough patch and just needs to, work on getting things straightened out. We'll see. Another guy getting sent back down to AAA. This was kind of expected, unfortunately, is Kyle Stowers. He goes back down after the COVID vax reinstatements happen. Quick thoughts on Kyle Stowers and what you saw on the small sample size.
I mean, first game, he drives in Adley with his first hit's a double for an RBI. That's cool to see. I mean, nothing against him, but it was a little bit bullshit. Like, play him all 4 games.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not really going to crap on McKenna a lot. Like, I mean, he's the 4th outfielder. He's that 4A type player we feel. I'm not saying his spot isn't justified for being here. Like, he should be sent down instead of Stowers, nothing like that. But you knew, like, one way that, like, you knew Stowers was here for 4 games. Because Santander couldn't travel to Toronto because of the vaccination status. Right. So you knew that. So just play him all 4 games. Give him that experience. Because what does it hurt? And it isn't like a righty lefty thing. Because like his numbers are pretty similar. His splits are pretty similar. Yeah. It's not like, you know what I mean? You're batting 400 against lefties, but righties it's 150. Like it's not an extreme like that. I wish we would have been able to see more because it really is hard to gauge, to put a grade on what he did here for 2 games when he should have played all 4. Because, like I said, you knew he wasn't. We knew what it was. He probably knew what it was too, well before.
I agree with you, and you know what? I came away impressed. Like the game didn't look too big for him. Obviously, to have a double and an RBI. I mean, how long did Adley wait for his first RBI? Right. So to do that in his first game. Was pretty impressive. He looked like he had good arm strength out there. He had good reads off the bat defensively. So there's a lot to like about Kyle Stowers' future here in Baltimore. It's just a matter of when. This was just kind of a dip your feet in. Let's see how things go, and we'll pull you back. But hopefully this isn't the last time that we see Stowers here this year. I got a feeling that's going to happen hopefully in the next couple of weeks. Maybe it'll happen after the All-Star break. We'll see. But speaking of Toronto, I don't know how you felt about this, but to me, it was good to see the team
really hate
stick it to Gausman.
Way, but I still it was good to see.
Yeah, it was great to me.
They did it to Bundy too already.
Yep. Mind you, Kevin Gausman just signed a 5-year, $110 million deal with Toronto in the offseason, right? So this is a big payday for this guy who basically the Orioles had given up on. He goes to San Francisco, kind of revitalizes things. But even
then, I mean, for anybody who thinks, like, oh, God, here we go, what he did in San Francisco, this is what he could have done with the Ravens. Yeah, but he wasn't doing shit before that. He wasn't doing it with the Reds. He wasn't doing it with the Braves. Right. sometimes that, especially the Giants, they always find that magic anyway. Like with players and the way their season goes, they always find that magic.
Oh, good for him, because he found a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, because he ends up getting a $110 million deal. But Orioles take it to him. 2 1/3 innings, 7 hits, 7 runs, 5 earned, 3 Ks and 1 walk. Called the loss embarrassing, to say the least, after the matchup.
Oh yeah, I mean he called
had some pretty harsh words.
It wasn't like, oh, I'm embarrassed. I should have done better. Like, no, I should have fucking wiped the floor with these guys. Like that kind of embarrassing. Like, and it, without saying his exact words, that's what he was saying. Like, I should have I should have had a no-hitter going into the 7th against the fucking Orioles. And well, you know what? If pitchers keep coming in having that mentality, guess what? You're going to keep getting sent back like they did to Gausman.
Exactly.
Like I said, I don't outright. It's not one of those guys like, oh, screw Gausman. Like it just didn't work out here. It worked in San Francisco when he got that big deal, and it ain't just saying the way the season's going. When he got that big deal, I had said it. That's not going to work. You're going back to the AL East. It's not going to work. Good for your payday, because you're not going to be able to do that against the AL East.
Exactly.
And you haven't so far.
Yeah. Last 4 starts, 17 innings pitched, 12 earned runs, 28 hits, 15 Ks, 6 balks, a 2.0 whip, yuck, and a 6.35 ERA. Man, that's a terrible contract, at least the way it's looking right now for Toronto
and
so far.
Silver lining for any real, diehard Oriole fans that, like, you roughed him up. Bundy came in with the Angels earlier, with Twins earlier this year. You roughed him up for 3 2/3, like 11 hits, 9 earned runs, a bunch of home runs, like just looking like dog crap.
Yeah.
It is good to see that, like, if you were unhappy that these guys weren't successful here and maybe showed a little success somewhere else, not so much Bundy, but they come the first time they're facing the Orioles, you rough the shit out of them. It's good to see.
100% agree.
Really
with you.
is.
It was good to see Adley finally get his first career home run and RBIs in Toronto.
For some people.
For some people. 2-run shot and a double on the night. Starting to heat up now.
Yeah, he really is. Yeah.
Picked up team's only RBI on Friday night in a 1-0 win over the Rays in a duel, a pitching duel, which was great
late.
to see.
It was late too. It was like 7th inning.
Yep. 8 straight games now on base. 345, a 1.027 OPS, 6 extra base hits in those 8 games. I mean, this is what we expected out of Adley. And, all it takes is that one for some players, man. It's just a matter of, finally, I got that off my shoulders. I don't have to worry about it anymore. I can relax a little bit more and get back to doing Adley things, and hopefully that's what we're going to see.
And it's quite literally what we have been saying on the show for weeks. Like, some of this, especially if you think of his contemporaries, like the Wits and all these other guys, they had a slow start.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, even a Mike Trout, you know what I mean? Like, it just happens. Not everyone comes out, hitting a home run in the first pitch they ever see. Right. And even then, a lot of those guys can look good for like 7 games, and then their next month can really suck.
Yep. So,
yeah, like you said, it's the same stuff we've been saying for a couple weeks. He'll break out of it. Looks like he is.
It looks like he finally is, and it's good, man. I don't know what it is about Toronto, but Toronto, for some reason, the Orioles hitters always do well there. I remember Chris Davis loved hitting in Toronto. It was one place that he actually hit very, very well in was Toronto. The Orioles hitters just always seem to, I don't know if it's seeing the ball off that blue backdrop a little bit easier than seeing off a green backdrop or what. They always hit well up there.
Yeah, it's a really weird park because, like, it is a fairly big park. Like, it's kind of like
that
neutral.
Ball flies,
but it kind of is like a neutral park, but the ball flies. And then you would think, oh, okay, yeah, well, it's flying, like kind of like, now, granted, we moved the left field back, but like kind of like left field, like the ball just flowed, but it was a lower wall. Toronto, that wall is not little. Like, that's like the same height as the wall out in left field, all the way across.
Yep.
And it's like almost more, a lot more symmetrical than a lot of the creative ballparks are, like Oriole Park. And like you said, it's just something seems like if you really hit it, that shit ends up like Ryan Mountcastle to the second deck, to the third deck. Like,
exactly.
It just flies in Toronto.
Yeah. Well, speaking of pitchers, we talked about Zimmerman, right? Kind of being that under the radar guy that popped out of nowhere for a while. A guy that really has hit rough times at the major league level for the Orioles, and a guy who I've been hoping to see something good out of for a while, Dean Kramer, right? Finally pitched a gem at home versus the Rays on Flow Rider night at the Yard. 6 innings, 5 hits, no runs, 1 walk, 5 Ks. his first scoreless outing in the majors. I didn't see this one coming.
Yeah, I'm hoping. I'm not saying like I expect him to come out of the blue and be mowing people down, but like I just want to see like good games, good command, not letting games get away from them. You know, getting 5-6 innings, not two innings, stuff like that. I know they're still kind of building him up to like it's kind of he had that slow start because he got hurt right away and stuff like that. But I mean, that's like, outside of because Diaz hasn't done anything, like it's almost like he's that big chip now from the Manny deal. Like, so one of these guys gonna matter. Having a good outing like that, even his first outing. He gave up a home run early, but he should have been out of that inning type of thing. He got it out and gave him a good amount of innings. Like, almost to me, it's like kind of maybe if he can come out and be a little like what Lyles was doing, where like you were eating innings and like you're not giving up 7 runs, you're giving up 3 or 4. I mean, that's the best you can ask for.
Right.
But it's just getting that outing out of him. That was really good to see.
It is good. Hopefully it is a sign of things to come.
Maybe just Flow Rider concerts every day.
Right. Before we take a trip down to the minors, the last thing I want to talk to you about with the Major League Club, all-star representative, right? More than likely, the Orioles are only going to see one all-star representative just due to their overall record, even though they are doing a lot better than they have. And I think right now they have a better record than I think 10 teams in Major League Baseball.
That's how it was after Sundays. Whatever's happening tonight,
right?
Or yesterday, I don't know.
So, based on current stats and current status, who do you see making the team as the lone representative for the Orioles in the All-Star game?
For me, more than likely would be a position player.
Okay.
And the standout for me, maybe Mancini. I don't think we really brought him up in this, but we can bring him up as we go along. But the two guys we highlighted were Hayes and Mountcastle, because especially in June, there have been the ones that have had like clutch hits, clutch home runs, go aheads type of thing. So for Hayes, he's got a really good slash line. You factor in like he was starting to really heat up. He had the incident with the getting stepped on his hand where he kind of teared down a little bit, but it's kind of like plateaued between that like 280, 300 range is where he's hitting now. 280 slugging, the slash line is 342, 456, 798. Team high 39 or 37 RBIs. He's only got 9 home runs. You know what I mean? Like the doubles are there. He has the best runners in score position average on the team. Stuff like that is easy to see.
Can't discount his defensive prowess as well.
He's had a handful defensive. We've seen his throws. Like he kind of has that feel of like last year, not exactly like what Mullins was doing, but Mullins was like that heart.
Yeah.
He has that heart feel. Like he's the heart of the team right now.
Yeah.
Not to take anything away from like Mancini and Mountcastle, but to me, like he's got that heart of the team right now. Yeah.
Yeah. I think if you're going position player, those 3 guys definitely take the cake. It's either going to be a Hayes, a Mountcastle, or Mancini. Mountcastle, another guy just tearing the cover off the ball right now. 36 RB guy. Used to go with 12 home runs, 11 doubles, coming up clutch as well. Just had an 8-game hitting streak snap. In the month of June, Mountcastle's 19th in OPS, 8th in home runs, 10th in RBIs, 6th in doubles, and 6th in slugging percentage in the major leagues right now. He's getting a little bit of that swagger back to him that we see when he was, when he hit almost 40 home runs last year, right? So I think Mountcastle has a good shot at potentially getting there, especially if he stays hot and finishes strong. But I'm going to go with a pitcher. And I cannot believe I'm saying this because I never thought a pitcher would be a representative, not this year, in the All-Star game. But we got a guy in the bullpen, a guy that I said this, going into this year, probably made the most sense as a closer because in short bursts, he has electric stuff. And that's Jorge Lopez.
Yeah.
He has been, I expect him to do well. I just didn't expect him to do this well. When you look at these numbers, credit to Connor Newcomb of Locked On Orioles as he put out this comparison. We all remember what Zach Britton was for that long stretch that he was here before going to New York, right? But 2016 in particular was that historic year that Zach Britton had, right? He had that long stretch of not blowing a save, and his ERA was stupid low.
He should have been the Cy Young that year.
Absolutely.
I still always think that.
So in that year, Zach Britton, through his first 28 appearances, had a .93 ERA in 29 innings pitched, gave up 13 hits, 3 earned runs, 33 Ks, 7 walks, 1 home run, a .134 batting average. Again, that's in that historic season. Jorge Lopez this year, through 28 appearances, a .82 ERA, down by 0.1, a 33 innings pitched, so he's got 4 more innings pitched, 15 hits, so only 2 more hits, 3 earned runs, same earned runs, 34 Ks, 1 more strikeout, 13 walks, so he's got 6 more walks than Britton did, but he's given up 0 home runs and the same batting average against at .134. Like I said, I expected this guy to do good in this role. I just never expected it to be this good.
Yeah, my only not knock on him. I mean, that's everything he's doing is amazing. I mean, hell, think of it like he's getting a lot of these like 4 and 5 out saves too. Right. They're just like, look, he trusts him that much.
And on back-to-back days.
And then even then, like sometimes like he could have like a 4 out save and do it in like 13, 14 pitches where like, dang, that's pretty amazing if you only did it against 3 batters. You did it against 4 or 5 batters. That's even better.
Right.
I think the only thing that works against him is probably us being not that upper echelon team doing those numbers. And the fact that like it feels like with All-Star, they just take a lot of starters and like 1 or 2, you know what I mean? 1 or 2 closers.
When
like,
you look at,
I think he should, but I feel like sometimes it's kind of how
the AL East.
Yeah,
the best team in baseball is in the AL East right now. If you want to say the Yankees are the best team in baseball, right? They've played a good amount of their games against AL East teams, and to have that kind of an ERA and have that kind of effect with this team in the process that they're going through. I just think if they are going to take 1 or 2 closer type guys for their roster, because you're right, most of the time it's 99% starters that they take.
Yeah.
This guy has got the resume to be on that roster without a doubt.
Yeah,
unless things change drastically.
I agree. I just can't get past the fact that like they usually take a lot of starters.
Right. Well, we're going to have some interesting discussion about the minor leagues, right? Because it's almost draft time. Right, as the Orioles are going to have the number 1 pick in the upcoming Major League Draft, right? I wanted to, before we talk about some of the prospects, take a trip down on the minor league system real quick, because we all know that there have been some missing or some moving pieces down there and some pieces that are going to be mainstays on this roster very shortly, hopefully before the end of this year, that have moved up to Norfolk and are tearing the cover off the ball right out of the gates in Gunnar Henderson and Jordan Westbrook. Walk us through what Gunnar and Jordan are doing down at AAA.
I lost all my notes.
No, you're fine, man.
I mean, but like right out the gate, Henderson and Westbrook, like in their first game, they like Henderson hit a home run on the second pitch he saw. Yep. Like they just right out the gate, they just like, oh, we're gonna prove we belong. So so far, he's batting 344. The slash line's at 523 and 594 so far. So like I said, couple home runs, couple doubles, continuing the theme of what Henderson's thing, 11 walks to 5 Ks.
Getting on base.
That's been one of the things like
523 on base. That's insane.
One of those things that like, that's what Elias had pointed out. A guy's getting on base, and that's what they're working on down there, especially Henderson. He showed it in Bowie right out the gate, showing it in Norfolk again. So only 3 hitters in all of the minors have more walks than him. He has 52 in 57 games.
Yeah, it's insane.
He had 56 walks all last year in 105 games. So that's just like night and day.
Yeah, he's put an emphasis on it.
And that's how you show improvement, because it isn't like, okay, you're doing those walks, and like I said, he's got 344 batting average. It isn't like, okay, you have all those walks, but you're batting 230, 240. Right. You know what I mean? Like nothing's consequential but the walks. It's a lot of getting on base with the hits too.
Right.
And I mean, he's flashing the leather too, because I mean, that's the thing. We don't really know what position he will be here. There's a logjam at shortstop with Jordan Westberg, with others, with Mateo, however long Mateo's up here.
Right.
So, he's not only played, shortstop, but he's playing mainly at third base, 1 or 2 games at second too, just trying to find that fit to see where it fits too. But he's made some good plays at third base too with the arm.
Yep, absolutely.
So Jordan Westberg, not to be undone, said, I'll just go ahead and bat 405 and bat a little bit better than him. 444 on base percentage too. That OPS is sitting at 1.254, really high.
Yeah.
9 runs scored, the doubles 4 doubles, 2 triples, 3 home runs, extra base hits, not little seeing eye singles, really slugging the ball, 10 RBIs. He can run. I mean, he can play the field really well. Tied right now with Stowers amongst those minor leaguers with 12 home runs.
And that surprised me.
That one surprised me, too.
I didn't expect him to have that kind of pop. I thought he might be a plateau at like a 20, 25 home run kind of guy. But I mean, he's on like a 30, 35, maybe even 40 type pace, depending upon if he can keep this up, right? I just never expected this kind of power out of Westberg, but that's great. I mean, he's doing great, and he's done it at every level. He started this season out, I believe, at Aberdeen and quickly moved to Bowie, and now already at AAA, and he hasn't missed a beat.
And it goes with what I always feel like, man, when Elias speaks, he don't mince words. He doesn't sugarcoat things when, for the negatives. But like when he comes out, it's pretty straightforward, and he already feels like he said those two have a very good chance of locking down our infield for a long time.
And that's good.
And when he says stuff like that, it's real. Like when Grayson got hurt, the way he talked, it was like, oh man, he was about to debut.
Yep.
And like stuff like that. When he says something, it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty on the nose. It's pretty real.
Yeah, for sure. And then in a feel-good story, we talked a little bit about it last week. Heston Kjerstad was going to be making his debut down at Darmarva. Finally did that, and he started out hot. Through his first 7, hitting .423 with 3 doubles, 7 RBIs, and 3 walks in 26 plate appearances. So for a guy who's missed a year and something of baseball to come out and continue to play that at that kind of level, it's pretty telling.
Yeah,
how
it's really good to
see
because like we have said, I don't know how much I've said on the show. Like when he got drafted him, I'm like, it almost was just like everyone's so against it. I'm just going to join this guy's bandwagon one way or the other.
Right.
But I did watching stuff. I liked what I saw. It just sucked. It's another one of those things. The same thing with like Adley. 2020 came along and they didn't play.
Right.
And then he had the myocarditis thing, and then now he was showing some promise in the spring, and then the hamstring flared up.
Yep.
Shit like that. So to see him just be able to go out there, I mean, a couple weeks ago he started in their little FCL league, but that was kind of like the rehab.
Right.
Now he's in low A, granted, and like, okay, you're a little bit older than those guys. Your skill level should be doing it, but like if he was showing nothing whatsoever against that talent, then you'd really be super negative on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
well,
it's
yes
kind of
and no.
Yes and
Again,
no.
it's
But
been
I'm just
almost
saying,
2 years.
like just in general, the numbers he's doing to me are like that's real.
Yeah.
Like it's all right. He ain't gonna be there much longer. I'm not saying I don't know where the season holds for him, but I could see him being in Bowie before the end of the year.
Bowie, wow.
That's
okay.
how I feel.
If he
I'm
finishes
not
this
saying
year,
there's no point. I mean, there's really no point rushing him either. I mean, there isn't, but I can't see him being at Delmarva too much longer.
I don't think he'll be there much longer. I figured he'll finish the year or play a good portion of the year at Aberdeen. If he does hit well there and finishes his year out in Bowie, that's a really, really good progression for him in his first year.
Yeah, I just really, I really just want him to be productive, like for his own sake, like just in general. It is something like it just sucks when you have when you feel like you have a promising career ahead of you, and then like just a couple years you're sputtering. A lot of guys that can just completely derail your psyche, your career just takes a shit. And I just hope that that's all kind of in the past now. Green pastures ahead.
Right.
I'm not saying, your future all-star or anything like that, but just to have a chance to prove yourself. I just really hope that for him to just keep that going.
Well, talking about the future and talking about draft picks, man, like we said, 2022 draft is less than a month away now, starting on July 17th. Orioles have the number 1 overall pick yet again. They are moving the draft to the Sunday before the All-Star game to kind of add to the festivities type thing. I don't know how the front office feels about it. Doesn't sound very good.
I've seen snippets of articles and stuff throughout the league, and not just the Orioles. Like GMs are not. I mean, Elias has come out and said it.
Yeah.
Like he's not. Like they want to make the picks when they were used to, because you get a quicker chance at that guy being able to go to their Sarasota and play in Sarasota. Yeah. The sooner they get
him in the program faster.
Sooner they sign a contract and get that program faster, and they can get them to like a Delmarva and see what they can get. Like for years, that's way it used to be. I get what MLB's doing, but at the same time, like I don't think it's necessary either, really, because what are you really adding to the whole festivities? Like you're not going to be on the pace of like what NFL and NBA do with their drafts of being
Right.
like this mainstream things. You don't get out of your own way.
You got to build
But-
to get there. They're just not
yeah,
there.
I mean,
And they're trying.
maybe in a few years, maybe this does work. But I'm kind of with the GMs. Like, I'd rather it still be happening like at the end of June instead of
I don't think
waiting.
Major
Especially
League-
the All-Star game was kind of back more. If it was another week and a half ahead, yeah, like okay.
Major League Baseball's drafts, I don't think will ever have any kind of
'cause
appeal to what the NFL and what the NBA has, because there's too much time before those prospects actually debut and make an impact, right? These NFL guys, I mean, they're immediate impacts. The NBA, they're immediate impacts. But they are changing the game, right? And another piece that they've added a MLB Draft combine,
Which is I didn't even really know existed last year.
Yeah.
Apparently last year it happened. I didn't even know about it.
Last year was the first year. Elias wasn't able to attend last year. He was there this year, and they actually interviewed him. MLB Network interviewed him a little bit and talked to him about stuff. And he said they're down to about 5 or 6 prospects that they're locked in on right now. The combine, what he saw at the combine hasn't changed that in one bit, hasn't added any names, hasn't removed any names. So take that for what it's worth as to what he saw at the combine. It's going to end up coming down to draft night as far as locking in their decision. He sees using the clock given as an advantage, a little bit of gamesmanship, right? Doesn't give anybody an inkling as to where they're going, right? And to his point, there are tidbits of information that can come in on guys, especially high school guys, right? Guys that you don't know a ton about, and they're still developing, and you're learning things about their character and who they are as a person and what their commitments are to these colleges that they've committed to, right? And what it's going to take to lure them to an MLB team, what kind of money it's going to take, right? All that information is filling in and coming in to the last freaking minute. And that all weighs in who you take.
I definitely feel like, and especially with being that first overall pick, it's the advantage. You get pick of the litter. Like, you don't have to, I got these 4 guys, and then, oh shit, we were the 6th pick, and now all 4 guys are gone.
Right.
You know what I mean?
You have the pick of the litter.
Yeah. So it's kind of hard to, it's an advantage having that extra, like, you're the first pick. And I think, and when you get down to the point where, like he said, having 5, 6 guys that are, that's their top of their board. Now in this next, little bit, or even the weekend leading into the draft, like, that's when you can go, all right, well, can we give that? Will that guy accept this money? We're talking to him, you know what I mean? Like, you're talking to agents. You're trying to figure out, well, can that guy be an underslot, even if he won't, you know what I mean? He's that top slot type guy. What can they get out of guys? And you're using every last second, and at least being that first overall pick, well, you got every last second to pick.
Right. And they've got a lot of money to spend this year too, man. The Orioles have the second largest bonus pool in history at just under 17 million, $16.924 million. The top slot this year comes in at 8.842 million. Also the second largest for the number 1 spot. Trails only the Astros back in 2015. Hello, Elias.
Hello.
So what do you do here?
Yeah.
What do you do here if you're the Orioles at number 1? Do you go college underslot or high-end high school? Like, what do you do here? First of all, for those that don't understand the lingo, because I know not everybody understands this, right? Let's explain what drafting underslot actually means. I'll let you take a shot at this.
I think a lot of fans think underslot, you automatically want to just be hypercritical and negative when the Orioles thinking it's like you're pocketing the money. Like, you still have to spend, like, you're still spending that money. And think of it like you have 16 million, almost $17 million. Okay, you have $17 million. You're not making 6, 7 picks. You're making, I don't know what I don't remember at the draft. I think they expanded the draft. You're not making 25 picks. You're
right.
You know what I mean? That's about the range. So I think a lot of fans think they hear underslot and they hear being cheap, or here you go again, same old type of thing. But sometimes that works to your benefit to maybe go underslot, and then that guy's automatically going to accept that money, because I wouldn't get that any other place.
Yeah, because the thing that you got to consider here, right, is you have high school kids considering whether they want to go pro or they want to take that college route and, take 4 years to hone in their skills, because you know, their agents are telling them, hey, in 4 years from now, barring injury, that money's going to be there for you, right? So you got to decide, do you want that money now? Do you want it later type of thing? Well, when you get into the second, third, fourth round, you've got some of these really good high school talents that are saying, you know what, if I wait 4 years, I could be a first round guy and make a lot more money. Well, the way you combat that is going underslot early and saving some of that money to pay in the second, third, fourth round with some of these high school talents to convince them to come pro now, right? So it's almost kind of like a salary cap type thing on the draft, and you're figuring out where do you want to allocate your money. So just because a team is drafting under slot doesn't necessarily mean they're not getting the best talent. They're just maybe getting a younger player who is going to, you know, increase in value over time at a later draft pick than they normally would go. You know what I mean? Again, a guy that would wait 4 years could be a first rounder, might go second or third round this year if you're going to pay him a little bit more money because you saved on that first round.
That's where I think fans get a lot of, like I said, hypercritical of the Orioles, because when you have like the first overall pick, that's like a different story than when you have like the fifth, when they took Cowser and everyone. I think that's when people were kind of fed up because they took the Kerstead, was the under slot, and then Cowser happened again, and you had a later pick, and there was some guys that people had in mind. And here under slot, like I said, you think you're like undercutting things, but you're really not. Now, having that first overall pick, when you're getting a guy like, let's just say, Drew Jones. I mean, if you're Drew Jones, are you going to split hairs over $750K?
Right.
Where, you know what I mean? Like, if I'm going to draft you first and then the contract negotiations go sour, you're end up like Kumel Rocker, where you're like, okay, now what? Like, you go to college. Okay, you go to college. All right. But then what if you Tommy John,
right?
Tearing, you know, you're running out something, you tear an ACL, like then you're completely off the board. So what helps the Orioles in that situation is you would figure that having the number one overall pick, it still works to your benefit. Much like Adley. Adley still signed for a little less than the slot, and it helped him get Gunnar.
Right.
And so, you know, it helped them had money for other things.
Kobe Mayo was another guy that they paid over slot for later on.
And that happened in 2020. So everyone was a little up in arms and kind of batting their head at Kerstead. Well, that allowed him to sign Mayo and Baumler, who would have gone to college. Now, granted, Baumler had Tommy John, but that's kind of good nowadays to get that Tommy John out the way.
Right.
But he's coming back, so he's still working. He's looked good so far. Mayo's definitely looked good.
Yeah.
Definitely looked like it's just people that are ahead of Mayo now, like in the upper parts of the farm system stopping him. So I think with this, I'm not too worried about them like blowing it who they pick, because like I said, I feel like you're in the driver's seat being that number one pick.
Right.
Where like when you pick a player, like, all right, were you really going to like miss this opportunity to sign something? I mean, like you said, almost $9 million. All right, well, if you draft Drew Jones, you're not going to sit there and say, well, we'll give you 5 because we want to get
right. We got another guy in the third round that we're going to get. Yeah,
Christian Academy that's going to really be just as good as you. Like, they're not going to do that. I have confidence in him one way or the other. I have so far with Elias.
Exactly.
Everything, like I said, everything he says pretty much comes to fruition. He doesn't beat around the bush. He's straightforward. So I'm kind of fine with almost anything they do here.
In that sense, then, he did say again in that interview that he had down to about 5 guys, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at who we believe those 5 guys are and what I think most experts out there project those 5 guys or those 5 names are. I'll let you start this off. You've already talked a little bit about him, and I think that a lot of people expect this guy to be the consensus number 1 overall pick. That's Drew Jones. Tell us a little bit about Drew.
So
he's
one that he's my like go-to. He's still, for me, he's the 101.
Okay.
He's who I want. His father's Andrew Jones. If you don't know, growing up, I loved Andrew Jones. Not as non-Oriole, that was like my favorite player. That wasn't an Oriole, because you could watch him on all the Atlanta games like TBS and all that stuff. But so he was a 5-time All-Star, 10 Gold Gloves, 17 years in the majors, mainly with the Atlanta was his great years. But like he was one kind of like him, like Miguel Cabrera, like right out the gate. They didn't stay in minors very long. They were real fast track. Yep. Nothing was too big for them ever. Even when he went to Atlanta straight off the gate, he was really good.
They were competing for a World Series at that point. They needed him in their line.
So, but he has 5-tool potential, top center fielder in the draft. even taller than Dad. He's at 6'4". He's a big guy, as in like powerful looking guy.
Yeah.
So that power should develop very well. Great bat speed, drives the ball. There's not very many holes.
Yeah.
I know things like
kind of a can't miss.
It's kind of a can't miss. A lot of people really are saying that he is a can't miss. You don't hear that every year.
Right.
You really don't. Like Adley was like the last couple of years until between now and Adley and Drew Jones, you didn't hear that a lot in the last couple drafts. Like between they're kind of like that same thing. Like
right.
This guy, pick him.
Right.
And I don't feel like money would be a problem.
Right. No, I agree with that.
I mean, we do see the Orioles have a track record with things.
So we're not going to go in order as to what we think that these guys are ranked here. We're just giving you our 5 names that we think are in consideration. And then after this, we will give you who we think the Orioles will take and who we want the Orioles to take, which could end up being different players. I'll give you the next guy. And this is a guy who was the early favorite to be with the Orioles. This was a guy that's name was on the radar literally right after last year's draft. That's outfielder Elijah Green out of high school, 18 years old. He's another guy with a good athletic pedigree. He's the son of former NFL tight end Eric Green. Played a long time in the NFL. He's 18 years old, another guy with good size. I mean, you talk 6'3", 225 pounds. He's a big boy, can hit the ball a long way. Probably the best power bat as of right now and potential in this draft. Struggled a bit with change in velocity. That's been kind of one of his knocks. Needs to work on the swings and misses. Tends to be not a high K guy, but could project to be a high K guy once he gets to the professional level. Very good speed for his size. Should be, I mean, he'll probably start his career as a center fielder. I could see him kind of having a similar body build to an Adam Jones type guy. Might move to a corner spot later on in his career, but should start as a center fielder. Can steal some bags. So this guy, I mean, he brings a lot to the table. He's definitely not the best pure hitter in the draft, but he definitely brings power to the table. And with that short porch in right field, could benefit with this guy.
To answer your question, Alex, too, he mentioned shouldn't we draft an infielder with all the fielders we have? I mean, drafting a guy at a certain position doesn't even really necessarily mean like
that's where they're going to play.
That's where they're going to play, especially like an infielder. Adam Jones, like I saw someone bringing up Adam Jones with like Elijah Green. Adam Jones was a shortstop. You know what I mean? Like,
and that's what I was going to say. A lot
Gunnar
of times
Henderson was a shortstop, and we're talking about, Manny Machado was a shortstop. He didn't.
A lot of times your top prospects start at shortstops because that's when you're at the high school level.
Anything up that middle and pitchers, like that's where the talent is.
That's where your biggest athletes are, your best athletes are, and then they go into the minor leagues and figure out where they're going to be at the major league level. So just because they're not rated as an infielder right now doesn't mean that that's not where they're going to end up being.
Yeah, and anything can happen. If you draft Drew Jones and he is the real deal and he's what you and a lot of people expect, you might find out that like guys like Colton Cowser are doing really good, or some of these other outfield prospects that are in the way. Well, if they're showing good enough and you need them, they're trade chips, and there's your center fielder of the future, outfielder of the future. So what you draft now can change completely in 2 years that's ahead of them.
Well, speaking of infielders, we got a couple on this list. I'll let you start with the first name that we have. This will be name number 3 on this list.
So we're going to go with another Major League pedigree, Jackson Holliday. He's all-star Matt Holliday's son. He's only 18, so he's out of high school too.
Yep.
Another shortstop. Really good contact. Power's developing. Fielder, I don't think you'll have an issue. I mean, he's going to be shortstop or third. He's got a hell of an arm. He's got great range. The infielding has no issue. It does that, does the power develop? Does the contact stay what it is? So he shows a lot of promise. That's another. I'm weird about this draft too, because I'm like, I know it's like a gray area, but like it just feels like lately we've been seeing a lot of these like all-star kids.
Yeah.
Like really shine, like Bichette, like Guerrero, like Bobby Witt showing some shine. Like I just feel like I'm almost kind of like, well, if they take someone like if they take Drew Jones or Holiday, I'm just automatically like they're gonna be great. Lately it's been working. I know it's like not a way to look at it, but
Hey, man, I mean,
Hey,
they've
you
been
never
around
know.
baseball, and they've been around top-level baseball since they were infants. So
It's like they won't be too big for them almost.
Exactly. Well, another guy who doesn't have any kind of athletic pedigree, but in my opinion, one of the best players on this board right now, second baseman Lamar Johnson.
The more I've heard of him, like he's kind of he's kind of that Drew Jones. He's grown right here.
I'm telling you, he is the real deal. He's another high schooler, 18 years old. He is an elite level contact hitter, best pure hitter in this draft by far. Bats from the left side. Already took BP down at the yard, so that was kind of cool to see, right? One scout gave him a double Hall of Famer comparison by comparing him to Wade Boggs and Vladimir Guerrero. Boggs' plate discipline and Vladimir Guerrero's bat to ball skills.
Which is amazing because Guerrero didn't have discipline. He could hit balls in the
but he could hit anything. It would bounce in the dirt and he could hit it. It didn't fucking matter. That's why I loved Vladimir Guerrero.
I was always a huge fan too.
One of my favorite players of all time. He's a very good defender. The only thing, if you're going to poke any holes in his game, the only thing he doesn't have elite level arm strength, right? So he's a second baseman right now. If he stays in the infield, more than likely that's where he's going to project as a player. Maybe he can move out to a corner outfield spot, but that's where he's a little bit limited. He's a very good defender. Don't take that away from him. But his arm strength isn't great. So this is a guy that I am extremely, extremely high on. We'll talk a little bit about him in a few
I've never even
minutes.
seen knocks on him. They're kind of thinking like, all right, well, a little bit on the shorter side, even though he's not really that short. Like he's 5'10", like he's still like he's average.
Right.
And I've seen it like does that play at second base? Or does it, well, like guys like Pedroia and Altuve have broken that mold where like they're shorter, they've got pop, they can hit the ball wherever, and they can play that field
Craig
better than
Biggio
anybody.
did it as well.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I feel like using height or size, and I mean you can't get taller, but you can grow and fit your body a whole lot better than in a couple years than you would see right now.
Right. I get that for sure. All right. So we've named 4 out of the 5, all 4 high school guys. We do have one college guy on this list. Tell him who that is.
Keep this guy in mind because like that becomes that underslot thing. He's already at college, 4-year player. Brooks Lee, another shortstop out of Cal Poly. He's at 6'2", 250 right now, projected to be in the first rounder in 2019, but he chose to go to school. And in going to school, just improved every year, kind of like Adley did.
Right. Exactly.
Different position, obviously, but that's kind of what if you paid attention to anything with Adley, like that's what happened at Oregon State. He just improved every single year.
Also, like Adley's a switch hitter.
So switch hitter matches that with good power and contact, low K rate, improved walk rate. I mean, hello, that's what we were kind of like.
Sounds very similar.
Gunnar Henderson is what we've been thinking. That's kind of like their MO with what they look for. He's not the most polished fielder, like another one with locks the arm strength for the next level and speed and all that. So that's another one. Maybe it's a position change. Maybe it's a switch over to second or, one of the corner outfield spots, stuff like that. But he presents a high floor that would be likely to move through the system much quicker, kind of like Adley. I mean, that kind of happens a little bit more with college players unless they're just not really cut out for it, and you find that out soon enough. But that's another one that brings up the big question mark because of his potential. If they feel like it's someone who will rise through the ranks pretty early, that's that underslot thing comes into play, then I mean, I wouldn't rule him out. At least it's a name to think of. But like I said, for me, I know it's kind of been like that stigma that the Orioles get, but I feel like when it's that first overall pick, I don't feel like they're going to go underslot like that. If it's underslot, it's just because they drafted a guy like, just say Adley did and Drew Jones, where he took a little less, but it's still that consensus number 1 pick. So go ahead. I
was going to say, all right, so we come down to this. We've given you 5 names, probably more than likely 3 out of 5, if not all 5, are on that list that Elias is talking about. I mean, it's not just us, it's everybody. All the experts out there project that these are the 5 names that are the best players on the board right now for the Orioles at number 1 overall. So I'm going to ask you, you can give me the same player for both, or you can give me 2 different players. Who do you think the Orioles will draft, and who do you want the Orioles to draft?
I've been like all over the place. I want them to draft Drew Jones. I'm sticking with that. Like I think he is the top player in the draft. I think I do. I mean, I won't lie, like it is stars in my eyes that maybe he is, fast moving just like his dad. And I know that's almost not fair to him, like to use that comparison. I mean, it happens. That's who I still want. I could see them still doing it. I don't think they go extreme with the underslot thing and doing Brooks Lee. I mean, I'm not going to sit there and say it's a 0% chance of that. Like there's a chance that it happens. It's a non-zero chance that they do. But I think that they could go with like Green or Jackson Holiday, still take a savings comparable to Drew Jones and still have that underslot, but still have someone that they would get. But I think what I want and what I think happens is still Drew Jones.
All right, so I'm in agreement with you. I think what will happen is I think Drew Jones will be an Oriole, and I will be ecstatic for that because I think, to your point, he is probably the closest that you can label a can't-miss prospect because there really isn't any weaknesses to his game. He's a 5-tool player that brings literally everything. So that gives you so much versatility as to where you can put him and what his potential would be. But I won't be disappointed if they go Tamar Johnson. And the reason I say that, I understand, and Adit brought up a great point. It's hard to make a guy with that kind of arm strength 1-1 at second base when he's limited like that. I get that. So that's my only knock on him. But when you have Hall of Fame comparisons like Boggs and Guerrero, you take either one of those guys tomorrow, right? If you're drafting and you can get a chance at Guerrero or Boggs, I don't give a shit who else is on the board. Think of what they were as hitters.
Yeah.
These are guys that hit 330, 340 like it was fucking nothing. And they did it for a long time.
Yeah.
Can you even name me a guy that hits 330, 340 now? I know the game has changed a lot.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I understand that, right?
Still.
I get that. But still, if you've got a guy who has a potential to be a 300, 310, 320 type hitter, and you have that kind of comparisons, I will not be disappointed at all with Tamar Johnson.
But Fred, you knew Guerrero's son. They were showing like videos of him when he was like 11, 12, just crushing the ball. He's like, oh, sign him now. Like every fucking team wanted him. And look at him now. It's just like killing it for Toronto. Like it was like a non-miss. So if you pass up on the Drew's son.
Yeah. Listen, that's why I say I think the smart pick
plus his name is
Drew Jones.
It's got to go with him. How am I not going to pick him?
Yeah. I really do. I think the smart pick is Drew Jones. Again, he brings everything that you want.
I'm with you though. Like I've been sold a lot more on
Tamar
Johnson because it started off with like there's something a little bit to it that creeps in your mind with taking the bat in practice at Camden Yards a week or two ago. So it made me like look at him a little more, and he did rise up ahead of maybe, you know what I mean? Like he's probably like,
and he's left-handed hitting.
It is like it's Drew Jones and him as the 1-2 anyway. You know what I mean? So those two are I don't think I would really nothing would really surprise me. But I want Drew. I want Drew Jones. I don't think I'm ever going to really change on it.
6'4".
Yeah, I mean, again, I will not be disappointed if they go Drew Jones. I will be ecstatic if they go Drew Jones.
Do you think they already know their pick?
I really don't think they do.
I don't either. I don't think they knew it last year. I don't think they knew it the year before. Even when like Adley was the consensus number 1 overall pick a few years back, I don't think they knew it back then. It's there to Drew's point. There is gamesmanship in this, in holding tight and trying to get as much information on these guys as you possibly can. I think they're like we are. They're going back and forth on all these names and pros and cons as to which guy it is. I don't think they'll be disappointed with whatever route they go because all of this is elite. When you've got the number 1 overall pick, we talk about like how the NFL, you can miss a lot of times with NFL picks and busts and whatnot. These guys to me seem like slam dunks, most of them. You have one though that stands out of the group. So I don't know. I hope, I'm praying that Andrew Jones or son is the guy that they've got locked in because I'd love if you sign me up for an Andrew Jones type of player tomorrow, I'm 100% on board with that. Right. Look, and if he's bigger and badder and better, what?
And if he is,
why wouldn't you?
I mean, if he is, goodbye, Cedric Donahue.
Nah, we'll just move him over to left field. We'll move him over to right field. We'll still find a spot for him. I love my guy.
Yeah, we'll find a spot for Mullins. You're right.
Yeah, put him at second.
No rules. No boundaries. 2 topics. 30 seconds each. Normally, it's time for the 2-minute warning.
All right,
Scott. I gotta
fellas.
do my Scott one. Sorry, Scott. Let me lay down.
All right, fellas, it's time for the 2-minute warning. We got a few things in the cooker here. James, you're going to read the questions. Drew, you're going to kick us off.
All right.
Fire away.
There we go. The Warriors won their 4th NBA title in the Steph Curry era last week, with Steph having 4 rings and now a Finals MVP. Do you see him in the Mount Rushmore of basketball, top 10? Where do you have him ranked?
I'll be vague enough and say top 10. I can't put him in the Mount Rushmore. I mean, there's other guys, like, I don't like him, but I can't see getting ahead of LeBron and Jordan, like Kobe. You know what I mean? Like, right there, that's 3 of the 4 for me. But definitely top 10. And I don't care that, like, he isn't that complete, like, type players you would think of with James and Jordan. But to win that many titles, to finally add a Finals MVP to that, your regular season MVPs, to almost, you're changing the game almost because of how he can hit threes.
That's
just hard not to.
That's my point, right? So he wasn't in the conversation, in my opinion, for Mount Rushmore. Because you're talking about 4 players, right? I didn't think he was in the conversation. Now I think he's in the conversation, but you can debate it all day because of different eras and different impacts and whatnot.
They still got
what
time.
keeps him what keeps him in that conversation is the fact that he evolutionized the game. I mean, he changed the face of the game and how players play it today.
All right. What is your singular favorite summer sporting event?
I mean, it's easy. All-Star game. I always love watching the All-Star game. I don't know if I'll be cheating by throwing in the derby. The whole festivity of everything, though, in general. So maybe I'm cheating a little bit. Hopefully not stealing your thunder.
A little bit. That's
but
okay.
I do love the All-Star game. I'll leave the home run derby out. But, like, just it's the whole festivity of things. And you have, like, an all-star, a celebrity softball game. They do the red carpet type thing. Just, obviously, I love baseball. So, I mean, that's an easy answer for me.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing Major League Baseball does right is they do their whole entire all-star experience. Absolutely. The home run derby, how it's developed and how it's changed over the year. You talk about singular events, home run derby is just so much fun. But to my point earlier, this whole summer solstice thing, when it starts and when it ends, like I always get confused on that. Well, I get real amped up for NFL kickoff, week 1 of the NFL. And it's not just Ravens. I'm talking every single game, even going up to the Hall of Fame game, like just all of that, everything that surrounds the NFL that first week. I get so excited
Fantasy
for it.
Football,
I can't
baby.
sleep for it, man, for sure.
Football's king.
That's right. Well, we appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, Scott, hope you're having fun out there on a boat in Alaska, enjoying that cold water.
Yeah, bring us back some ice.
I don't even know what it would be like in Alaska at this point. I'm assuming
probably like, I don't know, global warming.
I don't know. Everybody raves about those cruises out there. They say it's the best cruise to go on if you're going to. I've never been on a cruise. So I have nothing to compare it to. But
whale hunting.
The whale watching and all that stuff.
That's what they're doing right now.
I was going to say, they're not hunting. They're watching.
Well, you never know.
No, we have a bag big enough for a whale there, James. But well, we appreciate you guys tuning in as always. Be sure to follow us on all of our social medias if you haven't done so already. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Smash that notification button too. That way you
smash it.
Yeah, that way you get a notification every time that we go live with everything. Make sure if you're not already, hit that like button on Facebook. Follow us on all of our social medias on Twitter. You can follow me at FredBLBS. You can follow Drew at Drew27N. You can follow James at JamesBond2032. And of course, follow the show at Birdland BS. We'll be back next Tuesday night. Don't go anywhere though, because James has pulled out some of your comments from the night. We're going to answer them in the after hours. So make sure you stay tuned for that. If you're not, we will see you guys next week, Tuesday, 7:30. As always, see you guys.
Say it.
It's time for the after party.
It's the last, it is the last call for alcohol. I kind of stopped after a while.
Well, we appreciate you guys tuning in.
Though.
I know James said the chat room was fire tonight. It was live. So is there a bunch of comments that we need to digest here, James?
Yeah, we got 23 of them that I put up. I don't know if you can see them, but the first one is
pull it up on the screen. Hit the little button. Show it. So just hover over it and hit show.
Okay, here's the first one.
Can't stand them guys from 2 to 6 on 105.7 The Fan. Everything JFC reports is wrong. I agree with you. That's a guy who I don't know how he has a job in local radio.
I think the Fan was just. And if you listen to the show, like it's kind of hard for me. As much as I shit on the show, like it's kind of hard for me not to listen to the show because it's the local sports radio station,
and it's prime time hours.
The time I'm driving home, like I'm not going out of my way. I'm already in the car. I mean, and then when I pick up the kids, they make me listen to music.
Yeah,
but like, I really think like they brought him in because of his connections league wide, and because it's like it seemed like it became a call-in show too. Like it's them spouting dumb shit, but then in between them spouting dumb shit and like
they'll get a great guest,
bringing Wyman down. It's like they brought in a great guest, and like I don't really, I'm not the big gambler, but like it seems like every single day, like there's a slot for like to talk to Ariel Epstein or somebody else for making it a gambling thing. And it's just like talk. That's not always the end all be all for everybody that's listening.
I feel like that should be a show in itself. Like if you want to talk fantasy football, you want to talk about gambling and sports betting and all that stuff.
That's what's on AM.
It's a big thing.
Like
it's a big thing. Sports betting is taken off, especially the more it becomes legal around the country. But that should be its own thing. I don't feel like that should be a big segment within a local talk show. And I guess they're just trying to fill air because
it's clowns. It's a clown show.
It is clown show.
You and Scott had a rant on them like a month or so ago. Yeah. It was due.
Here's the next one.
All right, TJ Robert Andino says, "Do you think if you give Lamar a mega contract like they did with Flack, it will have the same negative effect?" Well, any kind of large contract is obviously going to take up a large portion of your salary cap. So, will it have a negative impact? No, because this team is built around Lamar, and the success of this team rides with Lamar, right? So what's the alternative? Not paying him the contract and not having him and trying to go fish and find another guy? Like, I don't think it's going to have a negative impact, but a $40 million, $50 million annual contract is going to impact the cap. Yes. But as that cap number kind of gets easier and easier to absorb as the years go on and the salary cap gets bigger and bigger, it won't have as bad of an impact. It may just be a little harsh in that first year or two.
So I'm going to throw this with it because it's another one that he commented.
Realistically, do you think with Lamar's style of play, do you think he can play past the age of 34? What do you think, Drew?
You can evolve your game. See, that's the thing. I feel like everyone just wants to equate him to running, or that you're going to get hurt because you're running. Like we said, I stand by, like, he got hurt in the pocket because that offensive line was so bad.
Yeah.
And in that Cleveland game, like, he just couldn't get away from the guy.
And his game had nothing to do with
like he
him
did not slide. Like, he doesn't take the hits. Like, yeah, he does those kind of things where he kind of keeps the play alive, but like when it's someone comes in, he notices them, he's down or he's out of bounds. Like, it's not like I'm sitting there like pulling like what Cam Newton does, or hell, no one brings it up either. Like, you give Josh Allen all this credit for all he does, and I think he
takes a ton of hits.
He leads. I wish I knew the numbers. I want to say like he has 32 rushing touchdowns in his career,
right?
And in that same time span, Buffalo running backs have like 28 or 29. That's not a good thing. Like, I don't care if you're a big guy. Like, that's not a good thing in the long run. It's the same thing that happened to Cam Newton. Right. Cam Newton is, he had a really good arm. He was a quarterback. He wasn't a running back. He was just trying to mow and Josh Allen does a little bit of the same. And like, that's how I feel like you don't see the same kind of question. Like, what does Josh Allen look like at 34?
Right.
And I get it. Maybe not running as much because, it's the touchdown runs and not like 1,000 yards. I mean, I can get it. Being that plateau, you think of 34, and then if he can adjust to being a pocket passer, sure. But at least if you're thinking about that main contract, that main contract, until you keep rolling it over like kind of like Aaron Rodgers, that first contract is still going to be well short of the age 34 season anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you continue your trajectory, what you're doing, like if 34 was like your kind of barometer of where things maybe could turn the corner, well, maybe the game is different. His game is different at that point, and he does show longevity.
I think it's a great answer.
At least it just in contrast to that first contract that you would be giving him in that age, that'd be my opinion.
Gotcha. That's a great answer. Go ahead with the next one, James.
All right, so Thomas had 2. This is the first one.
He needs $40 million a year guaranteed plus incentives and an escalator because to keep him in the top 5 highest paid quarterbacks.
And the reason why I brought this up, I put in the chat, like, if you guys are going to pay Lamar, what do you think his contract should be around? What are you talking? And a couple people like Ryan say he should get $50 million a year with a guarantee of $350 million.
Right. So I think he's going to be in that top 2 if he signs before this season. So this season changes a lot of things. If he signs before this season, before training camp, he'll be in that top 2 or 3 quarterback money. But if he goes into this year without a contract, and like I said, he plays on that MVP type conversation year, he's going to be 1 and 1A. Like he will have the largest contract as an NFL quarterback at the time that he signs his deal. The whole escalator thing, I mean, we haven't really seen that in the verbiage of current quarterback contracts. Maybe that's something that Lamar's trying to work in, and maybe he's trying to be that, that new guy that sets a new trend and sets a new thing for quarterbacks to achieve. I think it would make sense for him. I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense for the team. I think the team would rather say, all right, well, we'll pay you a little heavy in year 1 and year 2, but then we're going to see the return on that year 3, 4, and 5 when that cap number gets big, but your contract value stays the same. That's just my opinion on it at all.
And then his next comment is...
Does the Hollywood trade make it more likely that Justice Hill makes a team as a receiving threat out of the backfield with yak potential?
Yeah.
Hollywood's trade has nothing to do with that. I don't think. What has more to do with that is the health of Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. Yeah. If those guys aren't ready to go, like we talked about earlier, he could very easily make this roster because of lack of options and his familiarity with the team. But I don't see it any other way happening.
Yeah, I don't either. And like a lot of generality of it is like when you have, and I think like, when you have a wide receiver that goes away like that and takes, 150 targets, it vacates 150 targets. A lot of times the kind of general feeling is like running backs benefit from that more. So I see what you were saying with the Justice Hill thing, but then that'd be the point of drafting Tyler Batty because Tyler Batty could do it both. Right. Gus, you know what I mean? Like Gus and Dobbins could do both. I mean, Gus a little less, but like they could be that dual threat, running back with the catches. So, I mean, like I said, you drafted 2 tight ends. I don't know, both stay, but if Likely can do what Hurst does, you know what I mean? Like that was where targets would go. I don't think Justice Hill's here finally. Like I really don't. I mean, the
only way he makes a roster, like I said, if there's
we have another injuries again. I mean, that's kind of how it was going when we were trying to decide last roster spots when we got in August last year. Like, well, a couple guys might get hurt, and then Justice Hill, special teams plays into it, but I don't think so this year. I think that's probably it.
And then I'm gonna say the first comment. It's from Sherry. She says, and I'm gonna go through the list, and you'll understand why. I'm going with Flacco as his run and huddle. He buckled under pressure at all times, drove me nuts, craved way too much for me.
So he was
so much for me. Sorry, not sorry.
So he was our overrated player.
Overrated. And then I got Chris Redman overrated from Joshua. I got Thomas Morgan saying Michael Orr. You have Michael.
I was on board with the Orr one. Yeah.
Joshua said Michael Jackson underrated. Tom,
I agree with that.
Zibikowski. So so I guess that was the hype for a couple of years. And the most underrated for Marcus was Todd Heap. I pulled this one up.
He said most underrated Todd Heap. I think he gets a lot of credit, but he had terrible quarterbacks throughout most of his career. Had he had a good quarterback, he may have been in the Hall of Fame. Honorable mention to Steve Smith. So you're
Steve
saying
Smith's just rated.
Yeah.
He had a good. Yeah, I love Steve Smith's time here. I wouldn't call him over or underrated.
I don't think
It's kinda
Todd Heap
hard.
is underrated because I think Todd Heap played with the quarterbacks that he had and still had a hell of a career and is in the Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
So I feel like the Ravens
He's
value
rated.
him. Yeah, he's rated to where he should be. Had he been given a better quarterback, could he have played better? Yeah, but he's still honored as the best Ravens tight end in history.
Yeah. So then we got Chuck Summers said overrated Lee Evans, overrated Bart Scott,
Bart Scott
underrated
definitely was overrated.
Jarrett Johnson, and Matt Burke. They put underrated.
So underrated, Jarrett Johnson's a very good pick. That was one I had on my radar too. Overrated were the other ones? Bart Scott. That's a very good pick for overrated.
That's Bartholomew Scott.
I think what Bart Scott, because he was an undrafted guy and the kind of impact that he had here, playing in the shadows of Ray Lewis, one of the greatest of all time, I thought his impact here was good. So I don't think he was an overrated Raven at his time here, but he may have been an overrated player overall in his career because going to the Jets and all the hype and the me-ness that is fucking Bart Scott, he never lived up to that hype once he got out of the shadows of having Ray Lewis at that middle linebacker position next to him.
Stephanie Summer put Matt Burke, I guess, for underrated.
Matt Burke, another name that, a lot of those offensive linemen, Edwin
Still get a lot of
Mulatalo,
credit, yeah.
Edwin Mulatalo is a guy that played in, Jonathan Ogden's shadows. Everybody talks about Jonathan Ogden, but don't give the credit to Mulatalo and how good of a player he was. A lot of those offensive linemen are underrated, and I think Matt Burke's a very good example.
Another good one. I'm going to put this one up. Would Matt Stover count as underrated, especially with Justin Tucker being considered one of the greatest kicker ever?
I don't think those matter to each other. I think Tucker is one of the greatest kickers ever. That's fact.
And then
I think
Stover
Matt
would be in
Stover,
the conversation before them.
exactly, is
Tucker ran
also
around.
one of the greatest kickers of all time. Different eras and their impact on the team has been a little bit different. Tucker was there through the 2012 Super Bowl, and Matt Stover was there through the 2000 Super Bowl. I think they're both rated for where they should be.
Yeah, me too.
All right. So Steve, Monrun, underrated player Dwayne Starks. I forgot about him.
I love Dwayne Starks.
Yeah.
Dwayne Stark was a very good player who also played in the shadows of Chris McAllister. Chris McAllister was a guy that I thought about him on the overrated list, and I only say that because his impact was very good for about a 6 to 8 year stretch. And then he let the off the field shit kind of get in his way, and he became kind of a distraction in the locker room, and he caused
He always
issues.
want new deals.
Yeah, he always caused issues in the last couple of years. I remember him having a really bad game against the Texans. That stands out to me. So he was a guy I was kind of thinking about overrated, but I went against it because he is still the best cornerback of all time for the Ravens, and he had a really good stretch. He was cornerback, I would say 2 or 3 in the league for a good 6 to 8 years.
And the last one is from Joshua, said Kim Herring, underrated.
Kim Herring as a safety was very underrated. He ended up going to the Rams, I believe, and had a pretty decent career there. But yeah, his impact was definitely felt on this team.
Yeah, it's one of those where it's like the unsung hero types. That's kind of like he's one of those, like, you would hear about McAllister. You obviously would hear about all the stuff up front. But yeah, you would hear about McAllister to start, but then it was like Kim Herring was like, and Woodson, and Kim Herring was that guy.
Kim Herring was the guy that just nobody talked about.
Wouldn't mess up.
Yep,
As long as you're not messing up, you're good.
He was kind of the Chuck Clark of that then.
Yeah.
So that's about it about the Ravens. But to get into the baseball, I told Marcus we were talking about this later. I think we talked about this the other day tonight with the Angels coming out and addressing the
Put it up on the board?
Yeah, issue about the team. I think we all hit it on the head by them addressing the elephant in the room and cleaning up. I think we stopped talking about it because I think they let them be known what's going on.
Obviously, you don't want to see the family air their dirty laundry like that in public, but it was almost kind of necessary because you just didn't know where they stood as a family. And obviously they've got some issues that they need to work through. I was happy to see the response by Angelos' wife as well.
Which is a shame because here's the problem. I not against them. Like, they came out and said something. Like, I don't care if it was a press release. They're not going to come out and have a whole fucking full-on press conference.
Right.
Like, yeah, my brother's an asshole. What do you want? Like, what do you want them to come out and say? It's like he came out with a statement. The next day she came out with a statement. I don't give a shit if she wrote it herself, if he wrote it himself. I don't care what they got with PR. PR just came up. They as a organization said something. And yet it still wasn't like you expected them to come out and just be like, yeah, we're selling the team today.
Right.
Not going to fucking happen. I don't know if they're going to sell the team. I don't know. Like I said it last week and I went on my like mic drop. I don't know if I'm naive to think that what could happen, but it's not going to happen at the drop of a fucking hat one way or the other. And even if you want them to sell a team and say the future is in 18 months, you find out they're selling a team to a group of people. A group of notable billionaires. It doesn't matter now.
Right.
We only hear about this because it got out there, because Lewis is having, starring the family drama and putting it out there. So you only know about I was annoyed because I would see that like they put out the statement. I won't name names because I don't want to keep name dropping on notable people, but like. It's like you put the statement out. And it was like, gee, it would have been cool if you did this instead. You got out in front of it instead of wrote a press release. Who the fuck doesn't write a press release? You don't hear from a lot of owners. I think the issue is that's like shit. You don't really hear from Bisciotti a lot.
Yep.
I think a lot of problem is you have guys like not so much the Steinbrenner clan now, but you have like the George Steinbrenners of the world, the Jerry Joneses of the world, like that just. Have to be
in the spotlight.
Fucking spotlight. Like not every owner is exactly that same. Like doing a press release. If they would have done a press release or they would have waited until August or something, then I kind of be like, all right, you can give them some shit for. Right. But like a few days after the fact, by the time you came to the regular news cycle, they had both had statements out there.
Right.
That was good enough for me.
Gotcha.
Sorry, I had to rant about that.
No, you're fine.
I seen them catching a lot of shit for that. I'm like, I get it. Like, I get the Angeles families. Like, it's easy to go and kind of shit on them and attack them and be negative towards them. But it just, like, at least they said something. Like, what else? What are you supposed to do?
So Adit says, I'm leaning towards Jackson Holiday. Could bat from the left side, good bat probably from the left side, should be able to stick it short. And if he's like his dad, he should have a good career. I feel like Jackson Holiday is going to be a good player, but that's just kind of I don't know. That's the consolation prize out of these names to me. I really think that Andrew Jones' son's just going to be leaps and bounds above the rest. Like I said, Tamar Johnson really appeals to me as far as his bat skills. His bat skills, I think, right now are the best pure contact hitter in this draft. But he is a little limited in his positioning, right? And his arm strength and whatnot. So I do like Jackson Holiday, but you could say the exact same statement that you just said about Drew Jones because his father also had a very good career. You could say that about Elijah Green because his dad had a very good NFL career. It's athletes are going to athlete, right? And they've been bred to do this since they were born. I think all these guys are going to be good. I just think Drew stands out as the best.
Yeah, I still stick with it.
And then the last one, what's your thoughts on the 33 pick?
On the 33rd pick.
I mean, baseball's kind of hard to judge that. Like when you think of like the NFL draft, like what we say with the Orioles, with the Ravens, their first 4 picks were all projected first rounders or even damn near projected to the Ravens with that first pick. Trying to judge that now is kind of hard. Like you'd have to really focus on that'd be like your main interest is following all these players. And like you said, when it comes to like these high school players, like I knew a very little bit about Gunnar Henderson.
Right.
And even a little bit more about Mayo. I didn't know nothing about Baumler. I didn't really know, you know what I mean? Like even Kerstead, like you can see these names, some of these, when you're higher up in the draft, you can read about these names like we did with these guys and you can formulate your plot there. It's hard to judge. Anything can happen by the 33rd pick.
I'm right there with you.
I like the way they've been drafting. I kind of trust them.
I'm not deep enough into the scouting
it's hard.
To know all of all these players to be able to say who's going to be at 33rd. But what I will tell you and what my opinion is, I think if they go with a Drew Jones or a Tamar Johnson with that first pick and they go high school, I think they go college with a second pick because they're going to want that bat that might be able to impact the team a little bit faster. Because I think if we're honest with ourselves as a fan base, and I think if they're honest with themselves as an organization, I think they might be a little bit further along, a little faster than they expected, right? So I think they're going to compete a little faster than they expected. And yeah, obviously drafting a Drew Jones is exciting, but he's probably going to be 3 years away from actually making a major league debut. But if you go after a guy with a college bat, that's got the 4 years experience at college level with a second pick, he might be in here in 2 years. You might see him.
That's another one where the underslot plays into play too. The 33rd pick could be something that you sign for $1 million less, and then that next pick is a high school guy that nobody ever freaking knew about.
Exactly.
But the way that they've been scouting, the amount that they've been scouting, and the way that the system has been really good at developing a lot of these guys we read about and talk about. Like, I trust their developmental system to keep doing what they're doing so that when they pick a guy like 33rd, I'm confident like they picked him for a reason. They feel like he's going to fit. And it is hard for me to like, you can think like you think same old Orioles, you could think Angelos this, Angelos that, but like just the development and the scouting side, everything Elias does, I really have like kind of just blindly trusted because it feels like they said he's been a straight shooter, and a lot of stuff of what he said comes to fruition.
Yeah, it's true. All right, guys, we're going to sign out of here. It's almost 10 o'clock. I think it's 9:50 at this point. We'll see you guys next week, Tuesday, 7:30, same